I'd like to welcome everyone to the July 7, 2021 regular meeting of the Holland City Council. Welcome everybody that's here in attendance this evening and all of those who are watching us at home, online, either live or in a recorded version. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Byrd.
Present.
Peters. Garcia.
Here.
Trethewey.
Here.
Arnshorst. Here. Corbin. Here. Hoekstra.
Here.
Raymond. Here. Mayor Box.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We're going to begin this evening's meeting the way that we have for many years. First with an opening prayer this evening by our city manager, Keith Van Beek, followed immediately by the Pledge of Allegiance, and we would ask that you would join us if you would like to. Thank you very much. Keith.
Thank you, Mayor. For those so inclined, please join me in prayer. Thank you, Father, for the blessings that you have bestowed on us individually and as a community. We ask that you put your protecting hand on those from this community, not only in the city, but in nearby regions and this nation and the world afar. We ask that you particularly protect those that serve the city in various ways. And tonight, Lord, we ask that you would grant wisdom to our elected officials who consider the business of the city and represent people and make decisions on behalf of all of the citizens of this community. So it's in your name that we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Keith. Next are our consent agenda items. The items that are listed on the consent agenda are considered to be fairly routine. They have been previously reviewed by council as part of our packet and will be enacted in one motion unless it is stated otherwise by a member of the public. So any member of the public may ask that an item be removed from the consent agenda and placed in its regular order on the regular agenda, or a member of the city council may do that as well. But before we ask for that, we'll have Kathy please review the consent agenda for us.
4A, absence excused, Councilmember Peters. 4B, approval meeting minutes, June 16th, regular meeting, and June 23rd, 2021 study session. 4C, oaths of office. 4D, city clerk, claims filed against the city. 4E, city clerk, night magic displays firework request, August 20, 2021. 4G, Holland Board of Public Works, insurance service renewal for fiscal year 2022 with Marsh Inc. 4H, finance, purchasing, Parks and Recreation, award bid for tulip bulbs. 4I, finance, purchasing, declare items as surplus. 4J, finance, operating while impaired, OWI, blood draw fee increase. 4K, finance, May financial reports. 4L, management administrative services, downtown group, Windmill Island Gardens, approval of concession agreement with Nillis Dutch Village for the 2021 season. 4M, Management Administrative Services, Downtown Group, Windmill Island Gardens, approval of catering agreements for the 2021 season. 4N, Management Administrative Services, schedule public hearing, surplus property at the corner of M40 and 64th Street to August 18, 2021. 4O, Management Administrative Services, schedule public hearing, surplus property at 536 West 40th Street to August 18, 2021. 4P, Management Administrative Services, schedule public hearing, surplus property at approximately 578 Grasscuff Road for August 18, 2021.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. Are there any members of the public who would like an item removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda? Yes, sir. Please come forward. State your name, address, and which item you would like to have removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda.
Yes, Mike Short. I live at 810 Myrtle, Holland. I would like from item B, I had a public letter that was sent to the mayor, the council members, the city manager on June 11th, and it's not in the public record. I brought a copy plus the package, the article by Alan Malik, and I'd like it entered into the public record for the June 16th meeting.
I believe that we can, if you would give that letter to either the city clerk, she will make sure that that gets added into the public record.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Any other member of the public like to have an item removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda? Any member of council like to have an item removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda? Seeing none, what's the pleasure of the council in regard to the consent agenda?
Motion to adopt agenda as presented.
Moved by Trethewey, is there support?
Support.
Support by Aaronsource.
Did you say?
No.
I was waiting.
I saw the hand going up there, Quincy. Any discussion by council? Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Byrd,
Yes.
Garcia,
Yes.
Trethewey,
Yes.
Arnshorst,
Yes.
Corbin,
Yes.
Hoekstra,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is public comment. In every one of our council meetings and every meeting of our boards, committees, and commissions, we do allow an opportunity for public comment. It's part of the Open Meetings Act of the state of Michigan. In our regular council meetings, we allow 5 minutes of public comment. You can speak on any subject that you would like to. However, if it is an item that appears later in the agenda, we ask that you wait until that item comes forward on the agenda. I see a lot of signs out there in regard to the Unified Development Ordinance. So if you're here in regard to the Unified Development Ordinance, we're going to be asking you to wait until that comes up on the agenda. There will be a public hearing and an opportunity to speak at that time in regard to that issue. And if you're here for another issue that's on the agenda later, we would ask that you wait for that as well. We allow 5 minutes during our regular meetings. You will see that there are 3 lights on the dais in front of me. There is a green light, a yellow light, and a red light. The green light means you're doing well on time. The yellow light means that you have 1 minute left. And the red light means that your time has expired, and we are very strict about that. Also, I notice that many people have signs and placards. We do not allow you to hold up signs or placards or any media during the meetings. Also, when you are speaking to council, we ask that you address us directly. Your comments are to us, not to other members of the council or not to other members of the audience. Also, we encourage and we practice civil discourse here at the City of Holland. We are civil to one another, we are civil to you, and we expect that you are going to be civil to us and to each other as well. Having said that, is there anyone here who would like to address council at this time? Yes, sir. Please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Sure. My name is Ryan Havey. I live at 3305 Butternut Drive, and I just want to thank you all for what you do, and thank you for listening to me tonight. When we talk about affordability, we often think about dollars, specifically the dollars we need to spend. Holland has made it clear that we want to do what we can afford when it comes to adopting measures on climate action. And we think about the dollars we'll need to spend to make the recommended changes to the power grid. But I think we need to shift our perspective, because it's easy to quantify the cost of doing something, but it's much more difficult to quantify the cost of doing nothing. We cannot afford to undervalue the lives and quality of life that our citizens will face in the years to come. As the summer temperatures rise, so will the cost of electricity to cool our homes. As Lake Michigan levels seesaw from record lows to record highs, high-value lakeshore properties will lose their worth, causing property tax revenues to dip. This summer alone, we've seen record heat waves ravage the western U.S. and Canada, and droughts across the West and the Midwest. If drastic action is not taken, this will get worse, and Holland, Michigan is not immune. Holland has an opportunity to be a leader and set an example for what an ideal sustainable city looks like. Studies show that business professionals and investors are attracted to companies who take climate change seriously. ExxonMobil recently lost 2 of its board members because they saw the company wasn't taking the climate crisis seriously. However, if our city can rally around renewable, low-carbon energy sources, we can position ourselves on the right side of history and on the right side of the economy. We can attract new talent for our existing businesses and create a welcoming community for new businesses to grow. Holland has made it clear that we care about business. The Community Energy Plan opens with a mission to enhance the attractiveness of the city to investors, businesses, and residents. In order to attract such investors and businesses, we must show we are meeting the climate crisis with ambitious and aggressive plans that are both meaningful and measurable. Meaningful in that they ensure safety and health for our community, and measurable in that they demonstrate a decrease in emissions so we can achieve carbon neutrality in 2050 or before. I'm not ignorant. I understand this is not a problem Holland can fix on our own, but we cannot afford to bury our heads in the sand. It is clear we are not immune from the negative effects of climate change. However, it's not too late yet. Today, we have an opportunity to set a new standard for Michigan and for the country. Let's not let this opportunity pass us by. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to address council at this time? Yes, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Hi, Laura Judge, 6510 Oakwood Lane, Holland, 49423. Try to talk fast. I know you're going to have a long night tonight. The City of Holland has some big decisions to make in a few months when the Strategic Development Team brings a report of recommendations to you. Local governments can and will play a critical role in how the world addresses the environmental crisis already unfolding across our planet. Will you commit to decarbonization, green energy solutions, and social responsibility while continuing to be a city where businesses can succeed and grow? I ask you to take this urgent responsibility seriously and act swiftly. I'm over the moon happy that Consumers Energy has recently indicated it will shut down its coal power plants by 2025. With the anticipated closure of the nearby J.H. Campbell coal plant, they have made your near-term job significantly easier. A resolution from you to DTE might also help turn the tide on closing the Bell River coal plant sooner. The thought of no more coal trains rumbling through Holland and clogging traffic should be music to our ears. Recurring heat waves, drought, forest fires, and extreme rain events should concern all of us. The recent Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia death toll from heat was staggering. 3 days in Portland, Oregon of 108, 112, and 116 degrees sounds more like Phoenix. On a recent trip to the West Coast, I dodged 4 forest fires and hazy smoke covered half of Utah, and it's only June. New wildfires are at a 10-year high in the hot, dry western U.S. Since January, more than 1 million acres have burned from more than 28,000 wildfires. A San Francisco Bay Area friend recently recounted the terror last summer of the day the sky was a murky brown all day from the nearby fires. A relative in northern Oregon complains their climate is now more like Southern California. So what can Holland do about it? Number 1, cut your power sector emissions by 75% by 2030 from the 2005 levels. Further, set a goal of 10 metric tons CO2 per capita by 2030 using renewable energy credits, RECs, and carbon offsets to achieve this. Set a goal to half this again by 2040. State these goals in a resolution. Be a world-class leader. Number 2, turn the SDT into a continuous operating body which meets bi-monthly with 2 rotating council members on a 2-year term in order to strategize and inform council, business, and citizens. The SDT is doing great work. Don't turn off the spigot. Number 3, the HBPW must ultimately convert to carbon-free energy production and transition away from the natural gas fuel burned at the Holland Energy Park to alternative renewable energy sources. That long-term planning should begin now and not in 10 years. Consider getting some non-biased outside advice. Number 4, ongoing public accountability and annual monitoring and reporting of stated goals are critical. Will this require additional staff? If goals are not met, the city should buy equivalent RECs using MCIF reserve funds. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And lastly, number 5, set a goal of net zero by 2030 for all city-owned operations, including buildings, equipment, and transportation. Lead by example. Be a community with a vision and climate action culture. Businesses and young professionals searching for more progressive thinking cities will bypass communities stuck in outdated fossil fuel thinking. The public wants to support and encourage you on this journey. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address council at this time? And would you please state your name and address for the record?
Ann Henriksen, Zeeland. Thank you for turning out to express the Holland City Council that you care about our city. They made a rezoning plan in December when everyone was preparing for Christmas. Thankfully, some citizens were alert enough to see how this would destroy the integrity of the city. I'm here for another plan of the City Council led by Mayor Box. The same tactics were taken a year ago. An ordinance was strategically proposed at the busy Christmas season and then voted on in the summer when most residents were on vacation or at their cottages. It was the passing of the LGBT Ordinance 2020. Let me be clear, what I have to present is not anti-LGBT individuals. They are wonderful people. My brother is gay and my daughter is transgendered man. I highly respect them and they respect my faith. They both hate the LGBT activism. They say it disgraces those who just want to live their lives in peace and citizenship. Activism is supported financially by large corporations, Stryker, Whirlpool, Detroit Edison, Blue Cross Blue Shield. The activism is not what we want in our ordinance, but that's what's happening. The citizens of Holland had nothing to do in the construction of the Holland's LGBT ordinance. It came from the Civil Rights Commission under Attorney General Nessel, who refashioned the Michigan civil rights language from sex, meaning female and male gender, to sexual orientation, gender identity, and sexual expression. This was without Michigan's Congress. The push for the ordinance came from testimonies from LGBT individuals. They felt they were not welcomed in Holland. They said they could not find housing and feared eviction. They said they could not get jobs and feared being fired. That was the original purpose of the ordinance. They said they needed protection. The council passed the ordinance under the influence and pressure of Mayor Box. No one was watching the subtle movement of the LGBT activism into our town. What happened in June 2021? It was not about housing or employment. It was about how to change the community. Mayor Box blatantly proclaimed that Holland was to officially celebrate LGBT month. He opened the door to the activism. In a senior living center in our area during COVID, the residents were isolated 24/7, eating their meals in their room. The staff often would stop in to pray with the residents or read scriptures to comfort them. Family members would do the same by Zoom or phone calls. Many seniors expressed their loneliness and depression. The Bible and hymns were their lifeline. June 2, restrictions were somewhat lifted. The director of the senior living center, a Grand Rapids gay man, had placed in front of each residential unit a rainbow flag to celebrate LGBT month. The occupants in the independent living unit took the flag down and said they did not want their family and friends to think they supported same-sex behavior. The woman who did this was a pastor's wife. She was disciplined and told this living center is not a Christian facility by the director. In the assisted living unit, a son visiting his dying father took the flag down and said it did not represent his father's faith. The flag dishonored him. He was told he had to put it back up. Most of these elderly people come from our area and had in the day attended churches their whole life. Their faith is their identity. This is the last home on earth before they step into heaven. Family members, though unhappy with the June corporate procedures, said they feared repercussions for their loved ones, perhaps eviction if they spoke up. At a staff meeting, they were told the residents could no longer say the Lord's Prayer in unison at meals. One dining room determined to do it anyway. It was also reported that all the guest restrooms had the nameplates changed to all genders, showing figures of a man, woman, half man, woman, and a wheelchair. This really stressed out the residents. After living with COVID-19, now this attack on their faith. I called the director and questioned him about these events. He said it came from corporate and they commended his action. The rainbow flag men all are welcome here. I said, why not just a flag that says those words? He said he did not think anyone should live in a closet. I asked how many residents are LGBT. He said that the mayor of Holland, a Democrat, declared June LGBT month, and as a gay man, he deserved to celebrate it. even though the LGBT
Mr. Mayor, that's
ordinance-
5 minutes.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Is there anyone else who would like to address council at this time? Seeing none, I will close the public comment period. Next item on the agenda is the recommendation to, excuse me, we got to back up a little bit. Nope, that is it. Item 12B1, recommendation to approve the Unified Development Ordinance for first reading with final adoption scheduled for July 21 of 2021. Oh, you know what? I apologize. I did. I missed that. I turned the page too quickly. We'll back up. Item number 9, written petitions and communications. Thank you, Mr.
7A.
I'm
It's
way,
a long,
I am
it's a
way
long
off
agenda
this
tonight,
evening.
Mr.
I
Mayor.
apologize. You know what it is? It's having all of you guys up here. It feels so good to have you all up here. 7, special order of the day. A, and Finance Industrial Development District of 1870 Transport Lane. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. By way of introduction, I think Council is more familiar with the process that you're going to consider at the next step in the agenda, which is consideration of adopting a PA 198 tax abatement, which stands for Public Act 198. Before such an abatement can be considered, however, under state law, which of course we follow here in the city of Holland, is that an actual development district needs to be established. And such a district is established by vote of council and then sent out onto the state. And what that does is it defines a geographical area which could then be followed up by and considered for a company to apply for a specific tax abatement. So in this case, we have a new development located at 1870 Transport Lane. But specifically, the item before you tonight is establishing said industrial development district, which would be step 1, theoretically, in a 2-step process to eventually consider a 198 tax abatement application. I will admit with everyone here, I think that we have Lynn McCammon from our office, but also Greg King from Lakeshore Advantage, and I think also, and I apologize, a representative from AMST. So there we go. Thank you for helping me out there, and I know that they would like to at least make a presentation of what they're looking to do out there, and then I would recommend that the mayor open the public hearing.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Van Beek. Ms. McCammon, good to see you this evening.
Nice to see you. Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. I have the easy part tonight. I'm just simply going to introduce Greg King from Lakeshore Advantage, who's going to provide a lot more details, and then we will have some representatives from the applicant give some information and answer any questions as well. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Greg King, Business Solutions Manager for Lakeshore Advantage. This is not my first rodeo coming here, but first time in front of this, so this is kind of exciting for me. So I have 2 items for you guys tonight, in addition to the Industrial Development District for AMST, the IFT application for Profile Tool, which will be shortly following that. I don't have a whole lot of detail. I'm leaving the presentation side to AMST, so I'd like to welcome up Rick Mellema, the CFO of AMST, as well as Chad Mulder. So, you guys. Thank you.
Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome.
Yeah, good evening. Thanks for having us. Appreciate the time. So I'm Chad Mulder, representing MG88 Holland Cold Storage. Also, I'm the president of AMST Trucking. So AMST Trucking, I'll start with that. That's probably a little more recognizable to the community. Family-owned and operated transportation business that's been in Holland for 40 years. We're currently located on the south side of Holland. MG88 Holland Cold Storage is a new commercial cold storage development that we are developing in partnership with a family business out of Florida. So AMST Transportation, AMST Trucking provides transportation services primarily for frozen food manufacturers. West Michigan's has a large food manufacturing presence. A lot of these food manufacturers, in addition to the transportation needs, also require cold storage warehousing for their products. So we've seen a large demand for the cold storage warehousing side of that industry, which we are now partnering with, along with the transportation services we provide. So like I said, West Michigan has a large food manufacturing presence. We're a family business that's been here for a long time in the community. AMST currently has 110 employees based on the south side of Holland. But specifically getting to MG88 cold storage, this is a new development that is on property next door to AMST's trucking facility on the south side of Holland. Like I said, it's going to be owned and operated jointly by the Mulder family, which is based here in Holland, Michigan, and the Mandich family, which is based out of Miami, Florida. We see a wide variety of opportunity of services that we can provide for customers. We already do transportation. The warehousing will come with that. But there's a lot of food manufacturers that also need freezing of their product. So they make it and they get it out of their facility before it even has time to become frozen. So this cold storage facility will allow for that. We're excited for the opportunity to add additional jobs. We, at this point, project to have 55 additional jobs that will be created by this project. We're very excited, and I don't want to ramble on a lot, but what did I miss there, Rick?
I think you covered most of it. This is a major investment.
Could we have you come a little closer to the microphone? We can hear you, but folks at home might not be able to.
This is a major investment for the partners. Approximately $31 million will be invested in this new development that the Mulders and the Mandich Group is putting together. We plan on being up and running February of 2022. So it's a quick build. And I think most of you may be familiar with our construction partners, the Tippmann Group. They're doing a few other facilities around here. So if you have any specific questions on the development, on the investment, on the employment, Chad and I will be more than willing to answer your questions.
Great, thank you. Any questions from council members? Yes, Mr. Hoekstra.
Yeah, just one more so out of curiosity. I'm sure there are a lot of manufacturers in the area here that you'll be servicing, but what kind of geographic area or how wide a geographic area do you anticipate serving?
Yeah, so a lot of the majority of the frozen food that we warehouse will be manufactured in West Michigan. There's a lot of strong food manufacturing here. But it's really interesting. We're actually servicing customers as far away as Louisiana, Texas, Pennsylvania. There's a lot of food manufacturers that are looking for what's called consolidation shipping. So Walmart obviously is a big player in the food game. So the Walmart, Sam's Club and Walmart stores sell a lot of food. We have a consolidation program, meaning that we take freight from several food manufacturers, bring it together in the same facility, put it on the same truck, and go and deliver to each of these warehouses weekly. Walmart has 48 frozen food warehouses around the country that service their stores. So we have 15 vendors that we pool their freight, put them on the same truck, and then go deliver to one Walmart warehouse. And those food manufacturers, a lot of them are in West Michigan, but they're actually located across the country as well. Yeah, throughout the U.S., there's a huge need for frozen warehouse space. And COVID has only increased that. COVID has changed the dynamics a lot. When the grocery stores started running out of food, they got real nervous and said we need to increase our inventory going forward.
And you said it was not only cold storage, but you can actually freeze product for...
Yeah, yep.
Okay, that's an impressive operation.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Just to expand on that briefly, David, a lot of manufacturers, they have to get the product out so quickly that we're picking it up in our trucks, still warm. And we're actually delivering it into
freezers and freezing it as quickly as possible for future storage. So it's actually becoming part of their manufacturing process.
Mr. Corbin?
What type of solution are you using to do freezing? You know, the hydrous ammonia, what is the?
It will be a pneumonia-based refrigerant.
Any other questions, comments from council? Before we open the public hearing, I just wanted to mention to council and also to Chad, I had the opportunity to be there for the ribbon cutting for this. Looks like it's going to be an incredibly impressive facility. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn because I saw it on the big billboard there that this is hopefully a first step in terms of the construction that you're looking, hopefully at some future expansion down the road as well. It was also great to meet members of the Mandich family who came in from Miami who were very impressed with West Michigan and the work ethic not only of the Mulder family and all of the folks with AMST, but with West Michigan and Holland, Michigan in particular. So it's great to be able to be there.
Yeah, thank you. We're glad you could be there.
Yeah.
We're getting a lot of interest from our local food manufacturers for this facility.
Yeah, great. Any other comments from council? Yes, Mr. Van Beek.
And again, just as a reminder, I know we always like to hear about the companies and all those types of things, but if successful tonight, not assuming anything, you will have the opportunity to see them again because, again, this would need to be approved by us, sent on to the state, and then the step of considering the 198 abatement then would be a step that you guys go through, and then it also is reviewed by the state to make sure that it qualifies and falls within those state requirements. So stay tuned. You may see these gentlemen again.
As I like to do, I'm going to make sure that I understand what you're saying with that is we're not approving a tax abatement. We're not guaranteeing a tax abatement at any point in the future. We're opening the door for the next step in the process for that tax abatement to possibly happen. Great. Any other comments from council? Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I will now open the public hearing on this item. Is there anyone here who would like to speak to council in regard to this item in particular? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. What is the pleasure of council?
Will we adopt the recommendation?
Moved by Hoekstra. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Trethewey. Any discussion? Seeing none, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Garcia,
Yes.
Trethewey,
Yes.
Arnshorst, Corbin,
Yes.
Hoekstra,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Byrd,
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you. Rather than jumping way ahead on the agenda again, I think that we'll go with item 7B at this point. That's Finance PA 198 Tax Abatement for Profile Tool Incorporated, 1906 Russell Court. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. And I think you know what's coming. We have a representative from the Finance Department and Lakeshore Advantage and from the company that are about to speak to you. I will not go through the details of the project and steal their thunder, but what I will do is just remind, and for those of you remember what I often say when we consider these 198 abatements, is that this is again a state tool. The city doesn't get to create our own tax abatement programs. We consider abatement programs that are established by the state. This is one of such programs. And the way that I like to kind of put this in plain English is that the 198 abatement allows the city to get 50% of something instead of potentially getting 100% of nothing. And what do I mean by that? This particular company has already benefited from expanding their company once and experienced an IFT abatement similar to what they're proposing this evening. And what they're doing tonight is asking for a similar consideration. And what that does is that for a period of time, the investment that they're putting in, they would pay additional taxes not only to the city, but all the other taxing entities for a period of time, quite often, typically 12 years. But then they'd also get an abatement on the amount of taxes that they'd otherwise pay. And I think the number of the investment that we're looking at here is $962,000 and change. So with that kind of general introduction of how the 198 program works, I'd ask Lynn to come forward and then she can correct whatever I said that was wrong.
Good to see you again.
Yes, thank you. And yeah, Keith got it all right. So this applicant is for Profile Tool Inc., and that's located at 1906 Russell Court. And again, they work with Lakeshore Advantage, and Greg King is going to give you a little bit more introduction, but we have a representative from the company here as well. And yes, it's for a $962,000 project, which is expected to also generate an additional 2 to 3 full-time jobs, which is great for the city as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Greg.
I never get tired of the 50% of, something better than 0% of nothing. I feel like it's in my head all the time now. So I had the privilege to meet with John Elders, president of Profile Tool, who will be presenting their case for their IFT a couple weeks ago. Had a great time. Got to tour his facilities, got some exciting things going on there. Some really interesting capabilities that I hadn't seen before in my role at Lakeshore Advantage. So I just want to kind of entice you really quick before I bring him on out. So I'll kind of turn over to John Elders.
Mr. Elders, welcome.
Well, thank you, Mayor, City Council. I was here 20 years ago. Al McGeehan was the mayor. And they gave me, we put up a 3,500 square foot addition, or basically we put up our original shop. And here I am 20 years later. I really would like to congratulate Art Mulder. I mean, if I could tune my golf swing a little bit, I could hit them from my shop. But, the 2 or 3 more jobs, that's really what this is all about. And this process in my own head basically started in 2018, 2019. And the 2 or 3 more jobs, because of the addition, are already there. I have another gentleman starting on Monday, this coming Monday. So theoretically, we've got four new guys coming because of a change in business, because of a change in a lot of things, in my industry. So the only thing I'm really trying to do is provide my guys a nice facility, a safe facility was one of my main things, to do their job. And for the most part, it's been a real blessing for me and, for the city of Holland, I think. We're all local guys. I have one guy that drives a little, from Coopersville or something like that. But, we're all from the city of Holland. They're all very well, high-paid guys. I have a co-op kid that comes in trying to learn a little bit, learn the trade, do this and do that. We all have to work. I'm trying to provide a good place to work, a good environment, try to have a little fun and try to make a little bit of money if we can. And that's really all we're trying to do. And the city of Holland has been fantastic, especially, the BPW, the city guys have been fantastic through this addition that we've put on. I can't thank those guys enough. They changed my power over for me on a Saturday afternoon, and they did a fantastic job. So I'm a lot better answering questions than I am trying to, put things out there. But there's been 4 guys already that have been hired by me. Anybody that knows manufacturing knows it's a slow process. Especially in my business, it's a slow process. I had to lay one guy off for a little while during COVID, and it breaks your heart, But you don't want to go too fast to go backwards, twice as fast. So we're really trying to do a good job. And like I said, too, the city of Holland has been fantastic to me, and I'm trying to do what I can. We're a small shop, small job shop, just making, we're just trying to survive, trying to stay stable, I think is the best word for it in this manufacturing world we have right now. So I appreciate it very much. Thank you very much. But questions, please.
Great. Thank you. Any questions, comments from council members? Yes, Mr. Hoekstra.
20 years, eh? That's must seem like just yesterday, or maybe not. I don't know. You're obviously doing something right to be here
Well,
after 20 years.
It's like I say, it's a matter of, I've got, I would say 90% of my customers are in the Holland Zealand area. You know, it's not just a business. It's a local business, you know. We do a couple parts every once in a while for a company down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, you know. But that guy originally started in Holland, moved down with his family, you know, but everything, I mean, I'm through Holland, Zealand, 3 times a day, you know, doing what I do, and yeah, it's all local stuff, so.
Yeah, well, I will, since you like questions, I will ask you a question, Mr. Elders. And I appreciate your reference to your employees, and I think we get a sense of the culture that's in your company from how you've described it. But, you know, these 198s basically are kind of a give and take. The city, obviously you get a benefit, a tax break. There are benefits to the community in terms of economic growth in a general sense. And part of that growth and benefit to the city in exchange for this tax consideration is an opportunity for you to increase your employee base. Some companies, obviously, you know, they're talking hundreds of jobs, you're talking 2 or 3. Doesn't really matter the number, they're all important. What's important in all of that, and we've sort of developed a tradition here of talking about it, is the fact that we not only create jobs, but we create jobs that offer a living wage. And so I'm wondering if you could tell us the jobs that you're creating and what sort of wage range those jobs.
$30 an hour, $30 an hour.
Okay, I could live on that.
Now hang on a minute.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Now wait a minute. If you come and work by me, it's anywhere from $25 to $30 an hour. I will pay 100% of your health insurance, 401k, and I don't know, how many years' experience do you have? How much vacation do you want?
Well, we can talk about that.
Okay. It is a living wage. And you know what? Not one person in 20 years has ever come and asked me for a raise, ever. They've always gotten one before they've asked for it, you know? I love my guys. I do. I love my guys. And they will, like I say, it's a different, I try to provide a different environment. And the tool and die industry, it's a tough world to live in. You know, right now people can't sell cars because they don't have chips. Well, everybody here knows that automotive rules the world. Pretty much it does. If people can buy cars, they're buying other things. I mean, it is what it is. Mm-hmm. And I try to provide everything for my guys that my former bosses that I had, and I've had some really good ones. I just look at, I've been on both sides of the fence now, and I'm not saying that I like the side of the fence I'm on sometimes, but I know what it takes to keep. I've had 2 people in 20 years quit on me. One came from Allendale, and his wife said that it's too far for you to drive. He had 9 kids. Okay, he needed more time at home. I understand that. And the other one was an apprentice that his girlfriend's parents had a wrecker company, and he went to work for the wrecker company. Other than that, I've never had anybody quit, you know, and, you know, it's what we try to do.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your response to that. I would suggest that attitude probably plays a lot in your success so far. I'm retired, so I don't think we'll have a conversation.
Okay. So you get a lot more vacation than I do then.
On that level, and obviously the level of compensation that you're providing is not easy to sustain in any business. But I commend you for the posture that you're taking, and wish you the best of success in the future.
Well, thank you very much. No, thank you very much.
Any other questions, comments? Mr. Byrd?
I don't have a question. I have a comment. And Dave spoke to it, and you spoke to it as well. But to have no one ask for a raise, to have 2 people quit, speaks to the culture that you have there. I work in manufacturing, and I know how difficult it is to get people. And to see you already, before you got everything going, you're already getting people there. And again, no one's quitting. No one's leaving your facility. So
No, sir.
that speaks volumes to
Thank you.
the culture you have there and what you're building there. So
No, I appreciate
commend
that.
you for that.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions, comments from council? Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Elders. Appreciate
All right.
it.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I will now open a public hearing in regard to this matter. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak in regard to this agenda item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. And what is the pleasure of council?
Motion to adopt recommendation.
Moved by Trethewey. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Byrd. Any discussion? Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Trethewey,
Yes.
Arnshorst,
Yes.
Corbin. Yes. Hoekstra,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Byrd,
Yes.
Garcia,
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Kathy. Next item, we do not have any unfinished business this evening. Item number 9, written petitions and communications. In addition to allowing for in-person public comment at all of our meetings, during COVID, we knew that there were folks that were not able to attend the meetings, did not feel comfortable attending the meetings, so we established an email address, publiccomment@cityofholland.com. We collect those over the course of the interim between our regular meetings, and those are made part of our packet. We do not read them out loud at the meetings, but they are all read by all of our council members. And then at our regular meetings, we accept those into the record, and I would entertain a motion in regard to our written petitions and communications.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Trethewey. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Byrd. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now we are up to item number, I believe it's 10. I've got it written on my agenda here. Planning Commission proposed rezoning of 431 Washington Avenue from the C1 Neighborhood Commercial Zone District to the PUD Planned Unit Development Zone District. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. We have before you this evening a recommendation unanimously from the Planning Commission to consider moving forward with this rezoning at 431 Washington Avenue. As I look out in the crowd, I think Mark Vanderplug is going to be making this presentation, and we'll go through some information. I think the applicant potentially is here also as part of the process. So if she or anyone else would like to make comments, I know that will be made available. So, Mark, welcome, thank you, and take it away.
Very good. Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. As Keith indicated, you have in front of you this evening a request to rezone 431 Washington Avenue from the C1 Neighborhood Commercial District to the PUD Planned Unit Development District. So the Planning Commission held the required public hearing in regards to this rezoning request back on June 8th. During that public hearing, there was one neighborhood resident who stood up and spoke in favor of the request. Really kind of what's notable with this, we had 17 email correspondences also that came in, all in support of the rezoning request. So it's really kind of overwhelming, and it was good to see the support. So the Planning Commission noted all of that support, noted that the rezoning request complies with development trends in the Washington Square neighborhood there, complies with the city's master plan, and also some of the policies to increase housing types and different
different varying housing types in the neighborhood areas. And also that it would be a very positive impact for the Washington Square neighborhood, as this has been a long vacant property at the corner, the northeast corner of Washington Avenue, and I believe it's 18th Street. So the Planning Commission then voted unanimously 8-0 to recommend approval of the rezoning request. They also approved, well, I guess it was actually subsequently at their June 22 meeting, the Planning Commission approved a development plan that would accompany the PUD rezoning request. As council members know, a PUD, really, there's two components to that. There's the rezoning component, and then there's the development plan that goes along with that. The development plan for this property is really rather simple and straightforward. The applicant would like to have a two-family residential structure on that property. It's a small property, but this would be a very good addition to kind of that high-profile corner property there right at the square. So the Planning Commission is recommending approval to it. This came to you during your June 16th regular business meeting for a first reading, and you accepted it for first reading at that time. So in front of you tonight then is the second reading, and where you could potentially vote on this and approve that. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any. I know that the applicant, Joni Gibson, is here also, and I believe that she has some potentially some design staff or help with her should you have any design questions. So.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Vanderploeg. Any questions, comments from council members?
I have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
On your writing, Mark, the general staff comments.
Yes.
I appreciated, with your knowledge and your experience, with the enthusiasm for this project. You kind of have lent some guidance to me to looking forward what is possible. We get involved in all our little neighborhoods and little ways of doing houses, and this is another kind of opportunity that I haven't seen before, so I appreciate that education.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So this is an exciting project. I mean, it's just a small project, as you all can probably recognize. It's very important though for Joni. We think that it could be kind of a catalyst, and perhaps other developers might see the inherent opportunities in kind of some of these small neighborhood commercial areas that really are high quality places and maybe have been overlooked in the past for one reason or another. But there's lots of opportunities to build community and further community development. So thank you.
Any other comments? Yes, Raul.
I may have been absent during that initial meeting for the first reading, but did look through the material, and then also have been watching kind of from afar. So I've casually kept my eyes on kind of the development there. I've seen your car obviously in the lot as I drop off my kids at school this past spring, but excited to have something happening with this property, but not just something. I think something of this quality is even more exciting. I mean, I've been in that neighborhood for 25 years. I've frequented, every one of those storefronts over that time, and there's been a lot of ideas, and I think the property has switched hands, a number of times, and nothing has been realized. And so it's exciting to see something potentially erected here soon.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Yes, go ahead, Quincy.
Yes, I'm pretty excited about this too. I believe it was, I don't know how many years ago, all the merchants in that area wanted to use it as a parking lot and then have us take care of it as a city. So I'm glad we're not doing that now. We turned that down. So congratulations, and I'm looking forward to this. We frequent, I guess the really only big thing that we've had on that area is when the market came back. So looking forward to see the construction over there, as well as when we had the market revamped and new owners. So congratulations on that.
Any other questions or comments? I just want to piggyback on what Nikki had said. I was going to say there was a lot of back and forth between the applicant and staff, but back and forth I don't think is the right way to describe it. I think there was a whole lot of collaboration that went on. And as somebody who was involved in this for quite a while during the process, it was really wonderful to see that the city was an active partner in trying to help make sure that this project was not only done, but done right. And it wasn't, I don't think it's exactly what the applicant would have wanted from their first go at this, but I can see her standing in the back with a big grin on her face, so I know that she's very happy with where we are now. A lot of work from the Planning Commission, an awful lot of work with staff, and an awful lot of work and give and take on both sides with the applicant and with the staff. So really appreciate being able to watch that process and be a small part of that process as well. I think this is a real success story, not only for the neighborhood, but for the community and definitely for the applicant and her neighbors as well. So thank you. Any other comments from council members? What is the pleasure of council in regard to this item?
Move that we adopt the Planning Commission's recommendation.
Moved by Hoekstra. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Garcia. I'm going to give him that one. Sorry about that, Quincy. Any discussion? And I believe that on this one, we are going to do a roll call vote. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Arnshorst?
Yes.
Corbin? Yes. Hoekstra?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Byrd?
Yes.
Garcia?
Yes.
Trethewey?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We do not have any reports this evening from special committees. Reports from boards, city offices, and commissions. Item number 12B1, a recommendation to approve the Unified Development Ordinance, the UDO, for first reading with potential final adoption on July 21 of 2021. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Council. So this, we are potentially getting to the end of a very long process. It's one of those processes, quite frankly, that just from a procedural point of view is about as complicated as it can get. So what I've asked is that our city attorney, Ron Vander Veen, goes through basically what you are considering this evening at 3 different points on your agenda, and then only to make it a little more confusing, that then it's also all of those are on your agenda additionally as a first reading of the ordinance. And as everything is being set up, that it would then theoretically come before you, depending on your action tonight, at the July 21 meeting. These processes are complicated, not only for those of us that are supposed to deal with these, but I'm guessing for the 8 of you this evening, the 9 of you eventually, that are asked to consider this and understand the process that we're going through, but certainly also for the public, both here in person and viewing tonight. So again, I've asked Ron, before we have any other presentations or comments or anything on this, to go through and explain to everyone, and specifically, hopefully, make ourselves available to all of you on council to answer questions on the procedure so you're crystal clear on this 2-step process that you're taking both July 7 and July 21. And Ron will potentially cover other things that I didn't properly introduce at this time. But Ron, thank you for your work on this, and please take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council and members of the public. It's a lot of times the ordinances sort of sail through and you don't pay too much attention to the procedure, but this one is a large ordinance, and doing the procedure right is, of course, important. Do you have the clicker there to move it? Or?
Yeah. And Ron, is your mic on?
Yes, it
Okay.
shows it on. Maybe I should make it closer.
Yeah.
Okay, so what you have before you tonight is the UDO ordinance based on a recommendation by the Planning Commission. Zoning ordinance always has to go through the Planning Commission first and then comes to council for council to consider it. And the process is outlined in our charter that it has to be a 2-meeting process. I was going to say a 2-step process, but really there's more than 2 steps before council. It's a 2-meeting process. Section 5.4 of the charter says that the ordinance, and this would apply to any ordinance, has to be introduced at 1 meeting, and then adopted at a second meeting, usually the next meeting.
Would you like me to keep you up where whatever you're pulling up there, I'll make sure that we're there?
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
Let's do that.
All right.
You don't have to.
And, yeah, or I might start clicking on that by myself. All right, so, and moving forward, tonight is only the first reading. It's a procedural step to get it to the point where council can consider taking action on it at the next meeting. But it is only a procedural. It's not an adoption of the ordinance. Moving on, for the first reading of UDO, you have it on as agenda item 12B1. The proper motion for that, again, is not to adopt, but the proper motion is basically I move to place UDO on the agenda for first reading. And what that does is to have you put it on for agenda item 16 later on in the meeting. Then when we get to, and then there'd be, you could have discussion, you need a second, you have discussion, and then you vote on that motion, of course, like normal. During that process, once the motion is made and seconded, members of the public can speak by approaching the podium, being recognized by the mayor, and then they're allowed to speak. Once we get down to agenda item 16 on the agenda, 16A, we have it come up again, and that's the actual first reading. And the proper motion at that point would be, I move to accept UDO for a first meeting. First motion puts it on the agenda for first reading. This one accepts it for the first reading. I suspect that way back in the distant past, the council would read an ordinance when it was on for first reading, but we certainly wouldn't encourage that, and we don't do that today. Moving along then, in 2 weeks, it comes before you then for action by council. That action can be adoption, it can be rejection, it can be sending it back to the Planning Commission for more study and public hearings. It could be for adoption with modifications to the ordinance. Then at that point, the normal procedure, we would expect, I should say going into this part, we would expect that there's going to be staff recommendations for a few edits of the ordinance. The normal procedure then for handling that would be a motion and a second to adopt UDO. Motions are normally made in the affirmative under Robert's rules. It doesn't bind a person making the motion or seconding the motion to vote in favor of it, but it gets it before council then. But if it's made in the affirmative, it's just processed easier by council. So then after it's moved and seconded, then there's again discussion like any other motion. During that time of the discussion, members of the public can comment on the ordinance again by stepping up to the podium and being recognized by the mayor. And then council votes on it. The vote requires 5 affirmative votes in order to pass it. But now when there's a consideration of amendments to that or edits, is what I referred to them earlier, before you vote on them, then you consider whether to do the edits. And I understand, and staff will explain the various edits in detail later, but there'll be 3 groups of edits for the ordinance. The proposed edits would deal with the TNR, the LDR, and then the parking issues that have been discussed by council during study sessions. And we thought it would be easiest if we had those all grouped into those 3 categories. So at that point, then we have, in 2 weeks, we have a motion and a second pending before council. If council desires to adopt any of the edits, then the council would someone would make a motion to adopt the edits. So if the TNR edits are first on the list, council could adopt or make a motion to adopt those edits that will change UDO as will be specified in the report. Then there has to be a second, and then discussion and a vote on that motion.
I just want to clarify, because
Yep.
we went through this last summer when we adopted some other ordinances. The way that procedurally the process worked at that point, and I want to make sure we're following that, or clear that we're following that same process. There's a motion and a second,
Right.
and then we open it up for public comment. At that point, we close the public comment period after everyone who's chooses to have public comment, and then at that point is when council makes suggestions for amendments, correct?
At that point, the council can discuss the proposed ordinance and make motions for amendments.
Okay, but we don't open up public comment then again after the amendments. We do the one public comment period. Am I correct
Actually-
on that, or is there an opportunity for more than one?
No, actually, there could be public comment on each of the motions to amend.
Okay, okay. I just want to make sure that we're clear on that.
So then, after you address the TNR edits, then there'd be a motion, the opportunity for a motion to adopt the edits for the LDR and then for the parking. And each group is taken separately, and motion, second, discussion, vote. Again, 5 votes for each of those motions, and once you're through with that process, you have before you a motion to adopt UDO as revised by council. And at that point, then you can have discussion on that motion, and then you vote on that motion. And again, it's an affirmative vote of 5 members in order to adopt, and in order to reject, it would be less than 5 members voting in favor of it. You could also have a motion to amend at that point, actually a motion to refer it back to the Planning Commission at that point. And that again would take 5 votes.
I'm gonna interject here for a second, Ron. I noticed, because I'm looking at what you prepared. You must have made some additional screens to what we're projecting to the public to see, and I think both them and potentially council would like to have this to study before the meeting on the 21st. Oh, it looks like now Matt just updated it, so never mind this. But I will, just for everyone to know, we'll make this part of the agenda packet tomorrow morning. So Kathy will help me remember that, but we'll put this in the packet. So for council and anyone that would like to see what Ron's going through, that will be part of the agenda packet.
And Ron, Mike's got a question for you as well.
Sure.
Just a tad bit of clarification, Ron. This is, you're kind of catching me off guard sending this back to the Planning Commission, because we have been told throughout this process that because of this type of ordinance and this type of process, where the council has one set of instructions and one set of specifications and Planning Commission had theirs, we could not revert it back.
Now, council has the option under the Zoning Enabling Act to refer it back to the Planning Commission for further study and further report, or it could actually conduct a further public hearing before council. So it'd be unusual to do that. That's just one of the possible options.
Well, this is where my understanding of Robert's rules gets a little fuzzy, but help me understand this. Tonight, we have on first reading the acceptance of what's being proposed. So essentially, we're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, essentially we're saying, here it is, read it if you want to, have some fun, come back in 2 weeks, because that's when we're going to make the sausage. Am I right on that?
That's a very good description of it.
So this should be pretty easy peasy tonight, right?
For tonight. Mhm.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right, Quincy.
I just wanted to clarify what Mike was saying. I thought just as a group, we said we were not going to send it back to the Planning Commission because of all the work that was done, and we would, as Dave so eloquently said, make the sausage.
Yeah, I mentioned that only because it's an option under the statute. Certainly don't have to. Trying to remember if I've ever seen it sent back to the Planning Commission after it comes here with a recommendation. I'm not sure I have. But that is an option.
Yeah. Keith, and then Scott.
And I think it's just helpful to remember Ron did that perfectly. Our job, right, is to present you with the process and the options that you have available to you. And for example, Ron described through kind of the 3 areas of potential edits, and staff didn't really necessarily come up with those. We came up with those because you all had a study session where you talked about, and you didn't vote on anything, but there was, I can read a consensus and head nods and all those types of things. So we're in the process of preparing all of those edits along the lines of what you had, not assuming anything, right? But then what we wanted to be very clear about is that you understood tonight, Dave, and then especially that you were well prepared so that when you went into making the sausage, as he said, on the 21st, you understood, what you were looking to do and how we could prepare you for understanding a complicated process.
Okay, Scott?
So clarification on sending this back. Is the difference is because this is an ordinance that's being proposed, we can make the edits to ordinances where something else that has come to us and our attention before was things like rezoning and or like site plan development. Those are the things we can't send back. We either approve them or a thumbs up or thumbs down, correct? We can't send it back and make recommendations for that edit.
Yeah. A rezoning is an adoption of an ordinance. The action you took just a few moments ago was the adoption of an ordinance. That can be sent back for further study. Again, that's a pretty rare thing to do. The Planning Commission has spent a lot of time dealing with this and has made their recommendation. So it's really in your ballpark to take action on.
But we can't send it back with recommendations. Like a rezoning, we just send it back and say we're not going to vote on it, because they have to follow certain rules within the Planning Commission on site plan approval and or rezoning.
Yeah, this is not site plan approval at all. Site plan approval would have happened, for example, with the prior one where the applicant has the drawings of what they want to build. Right. And so that the prior action you took for the property on Washington had two things before the Planning Commission: site plan approval and rezoning. I'm probably saying those backwards because rezoning has to happen first.
Sure.
But then Planning Commission approves a site plan. That doesn't come to you for review, just the rezoning does. But here we're talking about just an ordinance without any type of development plans or site plans. It's an ordinance to regulate land use in the city. And so you can send that back with directions to consider certain things. But again, I want to emphasize that it's a rare action to be taken because the Planning Commission has considered all of this already. But if you feel there's a need for more information, council has the authority to do that.
Yeah, Mike.
But one of the biggest distinctions, and I don't want to beat a dead horse here, Ron, but it did catch me off guard. Mm-hmm. I have been told from the get-go that this could not go back to them. But because, and I think Scott alluded to this just a little bit, but because of the fact that we have the capability of changing the verbiage, mm-hmm. it would be extremely unlikely that we would send it back, because we can accomplish basically what we're trying to with a language that can be proposed or that staff is going to potentially suggest in 2 weeks. We're just dealing with the facts tonight. What was presented. It is what it is. Planning Commission did their job. This is what we're asking you to consider. We have the first reading. We do the legalities. 2 weeks, the agenda or the language comes up proposed. Mm-hmm. As Keith said, he read the tea leaves a couple of weeks or last week when we were here. Knows the direction, pretty much the direction that council would like to go in those specifically 3 areas. And I'd love the terminology sausage, Dave. Thank you. So we can't reiterate that enough. Tonight is just the first reading to get the process, to continue the process, not start the process, because we started a long time ago. But to continue the process, and then 2 weeks potentially to close the thing out and be done.
Right, 2 weeks is the key meeting where council either adopt it or reject it or modify it. And those would be the normal actions on it.
Perfect. Thank you, Ron.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Dave?
Yeah, I'm sorry to double dip here, but make it quick. Just a couple other things I wanted to state. I'm looking forward to the 21st because I think that's when we'll get substantive stuff done on this and address a lot of the things that I think a lot of you folks are anxiously awaiting us to do. And I'm looking forward to that too. I think it'll be a good evening. And by the way, I stole making sausage from former Mayor Dykstra, so that's not original thought by any means. Yeah, I'm sure he did. He was good at plagiarizing stuff. The last thing I want to say before we get out of all of this this evening is I want to express my gratitude to the Planning Commission and to the staff. We've said this a number of times, but it can't be said too many times. The amount of work that's gone into this document, even as we have it now, is tremendous. I'm a great one for flying at high altitudes, and I love executive summaries, and minutia bores me. But as I've gone through this thing, I've been incredibly impressed by the thought that's gone into it, the way it's been structured. I know not everyone will agree on it probably, even what certain things should be called. But I'm incredibly impressed with the work, and I want to thank the Planning Commission and some of our colleagues who are on that commission for the work they've done, for the diligence they've exhibited, for putting up with a lot of stuff that I probably wouldn't have put up with. But all in the spirit of trying to create something that will benefit and aid the community for years to come. And the staff, we always ask way too much of them, always, and they always come through. So thanks, staff, too, for everything that you've put into this. We'll get through it. The world's not going to explode. When we come to the other side of it, I think we'll have something that will be workable and good. And as we keep reminding ourselves, it's a living document. None of this is set in stone for the rest of eternity. If something needs to be changed, we can always change it as circumstance wisely tells us is necessary. So, but I just wanted to make sure to say that and acknowledge all the hard work that's gone into this before we start tearing it apart. So, thank you.
Any other comments or questions at this point in Ron's presentation? All right, keep going, Ron.
We're almost done.
Oh, Nikki, did you have?
No, I was going to, on this slide, I'm
Okay.
interested in the
Okay.
conflicts of
Yeah,
interest.
keep going, Ron. Thank you.
So, before you also for first reading are two other ordinance amendments that are not zoning ordinance amendments. When we adopt, and I don't want to presume it will be adopted, but when an ordinance is adopted, sometimes it affects other ordinances. So if you adopt UDO, that has an impact on several other provisions in the ordinance code. When UDO was prepared, one of the ideas was to try and take all of the relevant provisions in the ordinance code and to combine them into the one chapter. That sort of gutted some other chapters, made some other provisions, sort of standalone provisions that wouldn't look appropriate to be by themselves. It would be confusing. And so one ordinance that you have for first reading is an ordinance that moves, basically shuffles the deck and takes the cards and puts them in the right positions in different chapters and fixes that type of problem. The other problem you have when you adopt, and assuming if you do adopt UDO, would be that there are many sections in the ordinance code that have references to the zoning ordinance. And now when you totally change the zoning ordinance, then those references are all thrown off. And so the third ordinance that you have before you is an ordinance that cleans up those references. Some of it is just the name of what it's referring to. Some of it are section numbers that it's referring to. Those two ordinances are just administrative cleanup matters, not changing the content of the ordinances. And again, those are before you for first reading only, not for adoption. The other thing here, conflicts of interest. I understand that the question of a conflict of interest was raised about council, in particular Councilperson Raymond, and whether her position poses a conflict of interest. A conflict of interest under Michigan law is a situation where not just because you have an interest in an ordinance or other proceeding before council, all of you have an interest in that, but where you have a situation where a vote in one direction profits you. Typical situation where that kind of thing comes up is when you're approving a contract. A contract perhaps with a company that a council person is a member of. And so they benefit from the financial benefits of that contract. That would be a conflict of interest. Where the council person's interest is similar to the general interest of the city. And I don't mean that it's the same as all the people that attend the meetings, but the general interest of the city. that would not be a conflict. And I understand Councilwoman Raymond's organization, I'm drawing a blank on the name, Lakeshore Housing Alliance, its purpose in its company documents is to advocate for safe, accessible, and affordable housing. That's a public interest that the city has as well. The courts have indicated that actions to promote those things would be a public interest as well. And that would not be a conflict of interest there. So she would not be disqualified from voting on this. I don't know if there are any questions about that. Then just going on, just to wrap it up, to go back to specifically tonight, two motions. One motion on the agenda item that you have now is simply I move to place Udo on the agenda for first reading. When you get to 16B, the motion is I move to accept Udo on the agenda for first reading. And that would be limited action that you take tonight.
Great. Thank you, Ron. Any other questions or comments from council members? All right. Keith.
Yes, so hopefully you found that helpful. I think just because the mechanics of this is a little outside the normal, so we wanted to do that. Additionally, though, you are about to not start a process, I think Mike said, but continue a process that represents a very large document and many, many things involved with it. So I'm looking out, and while we'll probably do a little bit more on the 21st, we did want Jenna to come forward and just do a relatively short presentation, but a presentation on exactly what Udo in the larger context is. So thank you, Jenna, and please take it away.
Do you mind if I go over?
You are fine, and just let me know how to. Oh, you got the clicker, so you should be all set. All right.
Good evening, Jenna.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. So we are very excited to be bringing this to you for first reading. As has been mentioned, a lot of work has gone into it by the Planning Commission, by staff, and by our consultant, Chris Corey with McKenna Associates. So we're very excited to be here tonight. It really has been a great process, a 3-year process resulting really in a truly best practice document that will absolutely benefit the people of the city of Holland and all of its stakeholders now and well into the future. As a quick reminder, the UDO, Unified Development Ordinance, combines a whole minutia of details and ordinances all into one great document that's very easily accessible, easy to understand, very graphic heavy. This might look like a lot. It is a lot. It's 331 pages. But the way that it's been formatted and condensed and really worked through is really something that we're very proud of and we're very excited to place into the realm of the city of Holland and the public. And why are we doing this again? This is to implement the City of Holland's adopted 2017 master plan, which, as a reminder, was extremely resilient focus, really focusing on resiliency, sustainability, best practices. Also to update those antiquated standards, and in many cases, not even update the standards, but really just make them a little bit more easy to understand for all people, including staff that, have master's degrees in it. So, so really, a good legacy to pass on. Also to add best planning practices such as low impact development requirements, which is very helpful, and to enable a mixture of uses, which is really at the crux of what we've tried to do throughout this document, a mixture of uses, but also to ensure that there's context sensitive design throughout the entire document. So just to touch on mixture of uses for a little bit, and this is what's really very exciting about the Udo. And really, as you can see from the slide, is really putting the city of Holland at the forefront in zoning, not only for our community, but certainly as a template for other communities throughout the country. So a mixture of uses. So you have the vertical uses, mixture of uses, which are within the same building. You have horizontal mixture of uses, which are side by side or next to each other. And this has really been identified as one of the main ways that cities can create more sustainability and more resiliency so that people can live closer to their jobs, walk to work potentially, and to amenities. So Udo, like I said, is really at the forefront of this. Not only does it meet it, but it's really leading in this charge. And that's mainly through the adoption of the different zone districts, many of which are staying the same, but only, being proposed to be renamed. And the kind of dichotomy that Udo is surrounded by, on the foundation that it's surrounded on. Just really quickly, I just want to give a very quick history of zoning. I promise it'll be very fast. Zoning started as conventional. So really the point of it was to separate uses, separate the factories from the housing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this is very important in many circumstances still today. And certainly it's necessary, and certainly it's desirable by many. And so Udo definitely does this, and definitely still focuses on the zone districts where a separation of uses is appropriate. In doing this, and this is a real best practice as well, especially to have in a zoning ordinance or a unified development ordinance, is basing the zone districts and the establishment of them and all of the work that's gone into them on different transect zones. And the transect zones are the different contexts throughout the city. So instead of just thinking, one size fits all, really making an effort throughout everything that the Udo proposes to look at the different contexts, from the natural all the way to the urban core. So with this as really front and center in all of the work that Planning Commission, staff, consultant has done, we really wanted to start looking at ways to answer other questions and other problems that have arose in modern times. In addition to the need to separate uses, is the need to mix uses and to make things more walkable in some contexts. And because I love this slide so much and it's really important, it's here again. I can't stress enough how important this is, because when in most zoning ordinances and throughout the country, there is this thing about this kind of best practice now in terms of hybrid zoning, where you have form-based code zoning and conventional zoning. And that's really it. You just have those two. Udo is really taking that to the next level, which I'm telling you, myself, Mark Vanderploeg, Chris Corey, McKenna Associates, have not found a single other ordinance that does this quite the same as Udo does, which is really to focus in on all of the different typologies, the different contexts, and through its zoning ordinance, really promote those types, mixed use, administration, et cetera, throughout the zoning requirements. And in doing so, there's been a big focus on our mixed-use zone districts. So CMU is corridor mixed use, neighborhood mixed use, redevelopment mixed use, and greenfield mixed use are all relatively new zone districts. CMU and NMU are kind of are aligned with the old C2, or the existing, I should say, C2 and C1 zone districts. But you can see here that a real focus has been made to allow for unlimited density within the dimensional requirements. These are on your corridors, our corridors. They're enabling people to live near each other and near jobs, et cetera. And something that's super new and really quite innovative, which we're very excited about in Udo, is the HDR, which is the High Density Residential Zone District, and the MHR, which is the Manufactured Housing Residential Zone District, to allow for some commercial uses in that as well, a smaller percentage as accessory uses. And in the Industrial Zone District, which really nobody does, is allow for some non-industrial outlots in certain circumstances. So this is very exciting. This is really, I can't stress enough, really a pioneer in the field of zoning, and something that everyone should be very proud of. So there's also the conventional zone districts, which we discussed before. And it should be noted here that and based on what Ron was just speaking about, and what's included in your staff report. So the two conventional zone districts that have really received a lot of discussion in the last couple of weeks, months maybe, are the TNR, Traditional Neighborhood Residential, and LDR, Low Density Residential Zone District. And so I think it's worthy to note that the consensus that staff gathered in the tea leaves from the June 23rd meeting was that to leave the TNR zone district as it currently is in terms of the multifamily unit eligibility. That means that existing currently it's required to have 4,800 square feet of lot area per unit. That's been the case for the last 15 years, with 60 feet of frontage, and that is per consensus of City Council. That's one of those amendments that that's before you at your July 21st meeting. The other conventional zone district, LDR, low density residential, we also heard consensus to remove the requirements or the eligibility really for properties 10,000 square feet, 10,000 square feet or greater to have owner occupied 2 units or ADUs. So that is also something that will be discussed further, I assume by council on July 21st. And then for the form-based code subdistrict is the, for the form-based code North Downtown subdistrict, specifically the consensus that we heard, though there was a lot of discussion, was to change that to 1.2 spaces per unit, parking spaces per unit, from the 1 parking spaces that is currently required. So this is all very exciting, like I said, and although there are some changes, there's also a lot of things that are remaining the same in Udo, which really, put us in the forefront of planning and zoning, and in terms of sustainability and resiliency for many years to come, including things like in Article 1, we have flow charts and toolboxes. I'd encourage everyone to go and check that out. Really very revolutionary, I'd say, in planning and zoning. I'll also note here that per your staff report, Planning Commission at its June 22nd meeting also is recommending for approval amendments to Article 10, streets, driveways, and sidewalks. All of these amendments, as you can see, come directly from existing Code of Ordinances, from Chapter 32 specifically of the existing Code of Ordinances, and they're all redlined in your UDO, which is attached to your packet. All to give you a very well-formatted, very content heavy, but easy to understand content with some new standards, a lot of the same standards and processes, so that all people in Holland, both now and well into the future, will be able to benefit, and it will truly enhance the quality of life here in Holland. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jenna. Questions, comments from council members?
I just
Yeah,
want to
Nikki.
say this this final form that we're reading, it's really a knockout. I mean, when you look at visually, something, I need the organization. Despite some of the changes that may come, I think I do want to congratulate you. So if you're proud of it, and you're proud of it for the city, and I think we are too. So thank you for all the hard work.
Any other comments, questions for staff members? Great. Thank you very much, Jenna. Appreciate it. Any additional reports from staff on this? Otherwise, I'm going to ask council what their preference is in regard to this item.
Nothing else for me or any other staff that I'm aware of.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Van Beek.
I'll hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you. What is the pleasure of council in regard to item 12B1?
Motion to approve for first reading the Unified Development Ordinance as recommended by the Planning Commission.
Support.
Moved by Trethewey, support by Corbin. At this point, I will open it up to public comment. Is there anyone here who would like to address council in regard to this particular item? If so, please come forward and state your name and address for the record. Oh, and
I hope it's okay to bring my whole family with me.
certainly.
My name is Krista Tulse, my husband Steve, and our 4 children. We all live at 1178 Alden Court on the south side here. I am not a Holland native, but over the past 15 years, I have put down roots here, and I couldn't imagine living anywhere else. The proposed rezoning will take away opportunities for the highest housing demand, the need for single-family homes. There are numerous apartments and condo developments going up as rentals, just as many high-end housing developments as are going up too. However, there's next to nothing for entry-level home ownership opportunities. Please don't deprive my children of the future opportunity to put down roots in Holland by further restricting the home ownership market with the proposed rezoning. Please remove the residential rezoning proposal of the R1, LDR, and historic and Ward 3 TNR areas from the Unified Development Ordinance LDR plan for rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
May I add?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
It just feels to me, we've been watching this from start to finish. I don't know how many of you were on the original online meeting and watched how many people opposed this, but it feels like this is just being pushed through regardless of what people think. That the residents of Holland, they came out in numbers saying, we do not want this. And the city keeps passing it through, pushing it along, letting it go. And it's kind of like, how in the world, as citizens, do we get this to stop? Because you guys are all elected officials and you're supposed to represent us. And it feels like everyone is just passing it along, and it's just going to be we have all this in place, everybody's worked so hard on this, so we're just gonna push it through. But at the same time, if somebody builds a big machine and the machine hurts people, you don't say, well, they spent a whole lot of time building this machine, so we're gonna push it through to the public. You say, go back to the drawing board, come up with a better plan. And I feel that that is what is being done here. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Is there anyone, members of the audience? We do not allow any reactions to comments. We'd appreciate it if you would not do that. Yes, Mr. Trethewey.
Is it possible to have that slide back up of Jenna's recap of the 23rd meeting?
Yeah, we can do that. We can leave that up during the public comment period so that the members of the public can be watching that. But we are in the public comment period. So is there anyone else who would like to address council at this time? Yes, sir. And again, please state your name and address for the record.
You bet. Dave Skidema, 880 Pioneer. My third time here speaking. And am I seeing correctly that you are removing the LDR? May I ask a question, or can you not?
We do not answer questions at this time, but we may be getting to that answer after the public comment period.
Okay.
When the council discusses this. We're just taking comment from you at this point.
Okay. Well, then I'll say the things I'm going to say, where if you are going to, I would just say thank you. But first of all, I am going to say thank you, though, for the prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't know if every city in the USA is doing that anymore, but I appreciate it. Being a Hollander and stuff, I think that is great. So thank you all. Second, time and service. I've said this before. It's not lip service. I've been here 3 times, and I've spent a couple of hours reading the UDO and some of the other things, and you guys and ladies spend hours and hours and hours. And again, Mr. Hoekstra, the Planning Commission, all the work they put in. Again, thank you to all of them, because again, that's just, it's a huge service, so thank you. Like I said, if it's been removed, I would do that. The thing I wasn't sure, I did reread before I came online, and the LDR still says 10,000 square feet. You can have an additional dwelling unit as an attached unit, and I am totally, totally, totally against that. I told the story on my first time here, living on 906 Vassar. Duplex alongside the other side, a duplex across the street. Extremely hard time selling that piece of property when I sold it. And I don't think the 100-foot limit is in. I know that was discussed in the Planning Commission. I don't think that made it. Family or owner-occupied did make it, so that's good. But if it's just owner-occupied and stuff, that doesn't say that all of a sudden my piece of property couldn't have a 2-family on one side, a 2-family across the street, and a 2-family on the other side. And again, I'd be right back where I was. So, yeah, I'm not going to take my 5 minutes. I wanted to make it as short as possible, let others talk. But again, I just wanted to restate I am extremely against the LDR changes. So,
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address council? Yes, please come forward. And again, would you state your name and address for the record?
I will. Lynn Burns. I live at 457 Mercado Court here in Holland, and I left some of you a letter this evening earlier. I won't go into all of that. I'll let you read that. And tonight, I do feel a little bit of the unique quality of Holland, which I wanted to point out. So the gentleman who came up, appreciate them wanting to freeze our food and distribute our food and truck our food to us, and the other gentleman who had employees here for over 20 years. And those are some of the unique features of Holland that made my husband and me want to move here. We're originally from Michigan, but not from Holland, and Holland is a very special and different kind of place. So I'll keep it short. Please do not include R1, which to me is what differentiates Holland from other beach towns in the area. We looked all up and down the West Coast, and Holland was just our first choice, and it's because of the feel of that. It's because of the businesses when you go in and the people ask you where you're from, and they really seem to want to know. It has that wonderful small town feeling. Please do not allow builders of apartment buildings to only allow for one, or how are you going to do 1.2 cars? Come on, or 1.5 cars even. In a parking spaces. So please be realistic as to how many people will be living there who have and need to park a vehicle and need to use a vehicle to get to work. And I understand the idea of living where you work, working where you live, and being able to walk to work or ride your bike to work. I appreciate that, but that is not the case for most people. So I think that please, I'm begging you to please be realistic about what it is that you're approving. And please, again, do not encourage out-of-state and out-of-area developers to come into Holland and change the unique character of this city, because we get to live here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to address council? Yes, sir, please come forward. And again, would you please state your name and address for the record?
I'm Jay Wortley. I live at 311 West 12th Street.
I want to thank all of you for all the hard work you've put into this proposal. You've been studying it and analyzing it, and in particular the TRN and R1 zoning changes. And I just want to tell you I've worked for the Senate for 18 years, and I learned one thing at the Senate: nothing's final until it's final. And so I would like to take one more time to go over some of the key issues that are before you tonight and in 2 weeks concerning this change. And I want to strongly urge you to remove the proposed zoning changes to the current TNR and R1 districts that are contained in the UDO as passed by the Planning Commission, and adopt the proposed changes that will be before you in a couple weeks and that are on the screen now, which retain the current zoning standards. I also urge you to not change the name of the R1 district as currently proposed. If the current zoning standards are retained, then the proposed zoning, then the name of the zone should also be retained and not changed to a name associated with the proposed zoning changes. The zoning changes currently in the UDO are bad for Holland because they would reduce Holland's stock of single-family houses, diminish home ownership, and undercut the charm and character of Holland. Holland is suffering from a shortage of single-family houses. Ask any realtor or family currently looking for a house to turn into their home. In order for a community to grow and flourish, it needs a growing supply of single-family houses. In addition to the current shortage, Holland has experienced an actual decline in the number of owner-occupied houses during the past 20 years. Owner-occupied houses are important to a community because of the investments their owners make in the property and the stability and involvement they provide to the neighborhood and the overall community. Of course, having adequate rental property is also very important. The number of rental dwelling units has been steadily increasing over the past 20 years, and there are currently a significant number of new rental units about to become available. The density increasing zoning changes proposed in the UDO for our residential neighborhoods would decrease single-family housing units, decrease home ownership, and increase rental units, just the opposite of what we need here in Holland. The city should protect single-family houses, encourage home ownership, in addition to its already successful efforts to increase rental units. One of the UDO's stated goals is to protect Holland's beloved historic character and charm. I strongly support this goal. Allowing more of Holland's single-family homes to be converted into multifamily dwellings is directly contrary to this goal. Making it easier to convert homes into multifamily dwellings is not in keeping with the character and charm of our older neighborhoods. High-density neighborhoods can be very charming if they are originally designed to be high density. Taking established primary single-family home neighborhoods, many of which are already denser than most other neighborhoods in Holland, and allow more of the houses to be converted to a multifamily structure will destroy the character and charm of these neighborhoods. Our neighborhoods are charming primarily because existing homeowners love their homes and neighborhoods and have invested in their homes to not only maintain them, but to preserve their charm. The whole neighborhood benefits. Conversely, whole neighborhoods suffer when the character and charm of a home is destroyed. In conclusion, please help preserve single-family houses and home ownership in Holland and protect Holland's beloved historic character and charm by removing the density increasing zoning changes in the current TRN and R1 zone districts from the proposed UDO and retain the current zoning standards. I also strongly urge you to not rename the current R1 zone to the low-density residential or LDR zone. If the density increasing zoning changes are removed and the current zoning ordinances are retained, then the current name of the R1 zone should remain the R1 zone and not change to the LDR zone, which is associated with the proposed zoning changes. Changing the name without changing the zoning requirements would be confusing and simply not needed. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address council? Yes, sir. Please come forward. And again, would you please state your name and address for the record?
I would be happy to do so, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Fred Floberg. I live at 660 Grascup Road in Holland, 49423. And I am here tonight to read a petition that has been signed by 460 members of the community, all property owners, residents of Holland. Their names and addresses will be provided to the council members. This petition was circulated last December, so indulge me. It reflects the understanding of the proposed UDO changes at the time, which are now, of course, under reconsideration of some sort. The basic message of the petition remains the same, although some of the references may be now obsolete. It's addressed to the Holland Planning Commission members. Please add my name to the growing list of those residents who object to Holland's proposed residential use zoning changes. We believe that these changes would cause irreversible harm to our community's single-family residential character. The proposed changes are certainly not fair and equitable to those homeowners who purchased their residence with the current single-family residential zoning, thinking that it would never change. These sweeping changes would haphazardly increase density, traffic, and parking issues and put an undue burden on the existing infrastructure. Quote, upzoning, close quote, thousands of residential properties in the city would permit 2, 3, or 4 rental units within a home, depending on where you live and the square footage of your property, such as duplex configuration or so-called conversions. Allowing rentals of living units and shrinking the allowable distance between buildings and property lines to as little as 5 feet would convert Holland into a more urban cityscape. Overall, we believe that the continuing use of individual property variances will honor the principles that have created the unique character of neighborhoods that our residents have all said that they love. We hope that city leaders heard that message loud and clear on December 7th, when 111 citizens joined a Zoom call with the Planning Commission and heard over 30 attendees speak against this proposal. Not one person voiced support for the flawed plan. Similarly, many more citizens voiced concerns at follow-up meetings. A person's home is an important part of their life and a significant investment. People take great care when selecting a neighborhood that meets their needs and brings them not only shelter, but security, free space, and quiet enjoyment. Existing zoning is a key part of that decision-making process. Abrupt zoning changes across much of the city will seriously harm existing homeowners' investment and disrupt the community elements that made their selected location desirable in the first place. Furthermore, we are disappointed to learn that the exploration of this new residential zoning standard has been worked on by the city for years, but most homeowners were only recently notified that their properties were up for rezoning. This is not right. We need greater transparency and stronger partnership between residents and government, not top-down, one-size-fits-all policies. We did not elect our city government to impose this kind of dramatic change on the residents against their will. We recognize the benefits of development and future planning for our city. However, this blanket residential rezoning is not the right plan for Holland. We ask that greater consideration be given to other options so that any future plan reflects the insights and needs of all of us that already live here. We're asking the City of Holland to listen to its residents and immediately stop pursuit of the single-family R1 to LDR and the new TNR zoning changes. Let's find another avenue to consider options that are thoughtful and compatible with the existing residential character and beneficial to current residents. If this is not acceptable, we strongly request that you leave this up to the people in a public vote. And again, this reflects the sentiment of 460 residents of the City of Holland. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like? Yes, sir. Please come forward. And would you please state your name and address for the record?
Mike Short, 810 Myrtle, 49423 Holland. Okay. Let me just make one point before I read some of those names, okay? We're going to read them into the record tonight, okay? One of the comments up there for the conventional zone district says TNR and underlined leave multifamily unit eligibility the same as it currently is at 4,800 square feet. I urge the council to look back at your video because I think the understanding was that there would not be multifamily eligibility in the TNR, okay? So I urge you to look at your own recommendations, and as you look at the attachment that was put forth, it still shows multifamily eligibility. I believe your recommendation was to take it away from the TNR. I want to point that out to you because I think that there's some misleading on that slide. Okay, now I'd like to read into the record names of citizens of Holland. I won't be able to give you the addresses in the time that's allotted to me, but I want to read those names from my pages. So I begin with Ms. Lindell Herrick, Mr. David Boyd Fry, Sherry A. Overton Fry, Abby L. Stroop, Abby Minnick, Albert McGeehan, Alexander Arendt, Alexander Jansen, Alan E. Hoekstra, Allison B. Hilgert. Some of these may be your neighbors, okay? So as you listen, they're real people, okay? Alan Wilson, Alyssa Noel Lice, Amy Caldwell, Amy Daniel Scarehorn, Amy Lynn Vreeman, Andrea Morellis, Andrew Cooper, Angela Hinchman, Arlene Nickerson, Ashley Gist, Audrey Hislop, Audrey Peters, Austin Dom, Barbara Vandenberg, Barbara Hamilton, Barbara Inman, Barbara Hulsman, Barbara Worley, Bart Spencer, Ben Folkert, Ben Martinez, Benson Probst, Beth Erlinson, Beth Snyder, Betty Dupree, Bill DeVry, Bob Steenwick, Bonnie Lou Lubbers, Boyce Webb, Brad McLean, Brenda Soders, Robert Soders, Brenda Kerfoot, Brenda Hearn, Brent Folkert, Brett Toppin, Brian Dantema, Brian Crocht, Bruce Byer, Brian McCranner, Cameron Hurd, Cameron Parker, Carla Capitosto, Carla Stowe, Carlos Biargueta, Carol A. Holman, Carol Brink, Carol Hoskins, Carolyn Cooper, Chad Brower, Chad Steenwick, Charles Perkins, Donna Perkins, Charles Bohr, Cheryl Smith, Chester Dreyer, Chris Borchert, Chris Carpin, Chris Howell, Chris Gilbertson, Chris Blystra, Clinton Peterson, Kobe Sorensen, Colleen Wedekind, Colleen Murphy, Colton Decline, Connie Vandebunty, Constanza Hapsburg, Craig Boneberg, Craig Rich, Cynthia Welton, Cynthia Nykamp, Cynthia Wright, Dale Skipper, Dale Flowerday, Karen Flowerday, Dale Bronsig, Dale Hoskins, Dan Cody, Dan Molinar, Dan Kroll, Dan Jonker, Dan Brookhouse, Dan Goris, Dan Trainer, Dan Ackerman, Dan Stevens, Darlene DeWitt, Daryl Roman, Dave Weber, Mary Weber, Dave Hoekstra, Dave Machma, Dave Skidema, Dave Locker, Dave Mulder, Dave Saylor, Dawn Lehman, Dawn Oren, Deborah Goris, Barbara Jedinak, Deborah Rooks, Deborah Sturkin, Deborah Belargin, Deborah Madison Vodchik, Denise Beyer, Denise Huxema, Derek Winkle, Diane Scott, Diane Wilson, and Dirk Van Zalen. And I would like to leave this with the appropriate person.
You can leave that with the city clerk, please.
Thank you for the chance to do that.
Great. Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am. Would you please state your name and address for the record?
Wilhelmina Staketty, 300 West 12th Street. And I will be doing the same as Mike did. Donleen Darnigan.
Oh, could you put the mic down a little bit so the folks at home can hear you too? Thank you. Appreciate it.
Donleen Darnigan. Donald and Mary Butler, Donald Lamb, Donna K. Service, Donna Timmer, Doug and Beth Koeier, Doug Groeningen, Doug Potgieter, Douglas E. Guffey, Douglas and Scott Kleinstra, Dwayne Faber, Elizabeth A. Christians, Elizabeth Briederland, Elizabeth Villaverde, Alan DeLong, Emily Kimber, Eric Rosing, Eric Snyder, Eric Ibera, Faith Steketty, Fran Stokes, Frank Hoogland, Frederick D. Floberg, Gil Essenberg, Gary A. Buys, Geneva Catherine Schumacher, Georgia Bolthouse, Gina Doben, Glenn Hansen, Gregory James Green, Gregory Meinig, Hannah Potgieter, Heather Bowes, Heather Gerbens, Heidi van Wieren, Helena Klaasen, Henry A. Krantz, Hilary Klipp, Holly E. Haas, Isabella Cuevas, Isla de Vau, J. Andrew Dyer, Jack Allen Overbeek, Jacob Fickel, Jacqueline Marks, James Schippers, James de Boer, James Lawrence, James van der Brie, James Mulder, Jane Minnick, Jane E. Clark, Jane Coffey, Janet Gibson, Janet Marie Schaap, Janet Madison, Janice Johns, Jared Kimber, Jay Wortley, Jane Jansen, Jane Savinsky, Jeff and Myra Maxwell, Jeffrey Scott Brady, Jeffrey Scott Rowan, Jeffrey Sita, Jenna Klacht, Janet Terhorst, Jenny Steketty, Jennifer Williams, Jenny Lawrence, Jerry Siemens, Jerry and Diana Mokma, Jerry Combian, Jerry van Hoven, Jessica Dyer, Jim and Ellen Verbeek, Jill Seegers, Jim van der Zwaag, John and Joe Lappenga, John and Pat De Haan, John Darrow, John Edward Gamfield, John Knight, John Lawrence, Jonathan Mulder, Johnny De Haan, Joshua Foreman, and Joe Rena Lindsomer, Joyce Bolthouse, Joyce Mott, Judith Selman, Judith Donnelly, Judith van Apeldoorn, Judy van Linden, Julie Taylor, Julie Wassink, Julie Lopez, Julie Vroon, Karel John van der Velde, Karel van der Velde, that must be the same one, Karen Jill Gabriels Forster, Garen Lynn van Meteren, Karen Peert Bol, Carol Raab, Carrie Lynn Whitney, Carrie Charles, Casey Wolf, Catherine Brink, Kathleen Keenan, Kathleen M. Buma, Kathleen Salisbury, Kathleen van Vazen, Kathleen Seaman, Kathy Hoffman, Kathy Lynn Dam, Catherine van Vasselt, Keith A. Jones, Keith Smith, Keith Schaap. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to address council at this time? And would you please state your name and address for the record?
Yes, my name is Jen Greenlee. I live in Park Township. I'm continuing with the list of names. I am thankful that you are all awake now and you no longer are duped by the politicized COVID cover that was used for a long time for the advantage of having election fraud. Thank you for representing us and serving us, we the people that make up this area, expecting you to serve us. Names: Keith Vandermeer, Kendall Page, Kenneth Bogertman, Kenneth Stam, Carrie and Barb O'Donohue, Kevin Becker, Kevin Calkins, Kevin Klock, Kevin Simsek, Kim Koning, Kim Meyering, Kim Coffey, Kimberly DeJong, Kimberly Vesper, Kirsten Doolittle, Chris Mearsman, Krista Tulls, Christy Rosema, Crystal Bauer, Curtis Ritzema, Jenna Ritzema, Larry and Donna Van Weeren, Larry Erlinson, Laura Bongard, Laura Kleinhexel, Lauren Ellens, Lauren Decker, Lauren Van Ark, Lauren Ball, Laurie Vermeulen, Les Lanzer, Linda Falstead, Linda Winkelman, Linda Deviser, Linda Kaiser, Linda Shippers, Linda Clark, Lisa Corbin, Lisa Mulder, Lisa Kasten, Lois Bexford, Laura Kelman, Lori Codal, Louis Villaverde, Leah Lyle, Aaron Holtz, Line Berkey, Linnell Folkart, Lynn Wiersma, Lynn Burns, Marcia Schrodenboer, Margaret Sewell, Margot Fisher, Maria Cruz, Maria Carmen Makatsky, Maria Aquilina, Marie Von Websky, Mark Gilmore, Mark Heisinger, Mark Schroeder, Mark Simpson, Mark Witkowski, Mary Vanderkoy, Mary Wortley, Mary Ambruster, Mary Ninghaus, Mary DeBlay, Mary Vanderwater, Marianne Comijan, Matt DeHaan, Matt Reisinger, Matthew Doolittle, Matthew Post, Matthew Wolf, Megan Honiken, Melissa Ehrenhorst, Melissa Sekor, Melissa Vanderswag, Michael Stade, Michael Gieb, Michael Van Esperen, Michael Van Weeren, Michelle Calkins, Michelle Renee Traynor, Michelle Stem, Michelle Tanis, Michelle Woodenberg, Mahai Kraivono, I can't pronounce that professor's name, Mike Kelly, Molly Zorn, Monica Donnelly, Myra Karaki, Nancy Baker, Nancy DeBoer, Nancy Havman, Nancy Figueroa, Nancy Joy Nister, Nancy Deathmers, Nancy Stahl, Nicholas Weber, Nikki Courier, Oylin Jager, Pamela Olson, Pamela Vikma, Pamela Van Dam, Pat Dykstra, Patricia Terhorst, Patsy Ann Ellenboss, Paul and Carrie Trimmer, Paul Burns, Paul and Claudia Prodomos, Paul Steers, Paul Trapp, Paula Wasink, Pedro Paco Martinez, Peter Camps, Phil Nykamp, Phil Velda here, and Philip and Brenda Peterson. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address council? Yes, please come forward. And would you state your name and address for the record?
Kathy Buma, 1385 Heather Drive, Holland, Michigan, 49423. I want to recognize that we all love Holland, and I know that everybody in this room does, or you wouldn't be here, both elected officials as well as we the citizens. I think that we're just differing on what we see as the future of our city, that we've raised our children and now even grandchildren in, and how we want to go forward in the future. I guess, to me, somewhat it boils down to the idea of the walkable to work, to shopping, or bikeable. I don't know that I really want that. That isn't what I chose when I moved to my neighborhood. So I think there are other citizens who maybe don't want this cutting edge idea, and that may be the base of why we're kind of coming to loggerheads a little bit. But I do want to make sure that some of the people in my neighborhood are on this list, and I did walk the neighborhood and talk to everybody. And I'd like to read the names for the record, and I will give them to Kathy when I'm done. Philip Oskowski, Philip Harrington, Philip Vinveg, Philip Laird, Rachel Bultice, Rachel Ellenboss, Rachel Edgington, Randall Crocker, Randall Terhorst, Randy Helm, Rhiannon Wolf, Rhonda Edgington, Rhonda Petzak, Richard Phelps, Richard Wyman, Richard Lyons Jr., Richard Skippers, Richard Veenhoven, Richard LeBlanc, Richard Mearsman, Rick Collins, Rita Prinz, Robert Bishop, Robert Ashby, Robert Johnson III, Robert Pofel, Robert Vanek, Robert Van Meeteren, Robert Varik, Robin Thomas, Roger Courier, Rose Manis, Rose Stevenson, Rosemary Ellens, Ross Vandewa, Roxanne Helder, Ruth Douglas, Ruth Fox, Ryan Teveld, Randy Lakitas, Sally Floberg, Sally Tapley, Sam Tath and Marie Chow, Sandra Johnson, Sarah Probst, Scott Wodenberg, Scott Vandenberg, Scott Vroon, Sharon Dwyer, Sharon Mills, Sean Kammerman, Sheila Nickel, Shelley Defoe, Sherry Overton Fry, Sherry Van Horsen, Sonia Snyder, Stacy Carpin, Stacy Hurd, Stein Sletta, Stephanie Bauman, Stephanie DeLue, Stephanie Dokshot, Stephanie Fischall, Stephanie Harter, Stephanie Tavelda, Stephen Homburg, Stephen Lepping, Stephen Woowood, Stuart Ellens, Susan Brookhouse, Susan Scheitelman, Suzanne Hemeke, Tammy DeVries, Tanya Van Antwerp, Teresa Harrington, Terry Podorski, Theodore Osmiuk, Teresa Weller, Thomas Gallagher, Tim Fischel, Tim Grieving, Tim Veenstra, Timothy Grieving, Timothy Dykstra, Todd Gronevelt, Tom and Cindy Page, Tom Ost, Tom Stanley, Tricia Kuikenveld, Trish Harkema, and the last page. Vincent Henneken, Jeffrey Beard, Walter Coyer, William Manicky, William Russner, William Essenberg, William Betcher, William Lays, William and Nancy Wines, Yasmin Toulouse, and Yvonne McManus. Thank you for listening, and may we go forward and make the city we love of Holland, Michigan a better place for all of us, our children, and our grandchildren, and those that are unborn at this point.
Great. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to address council at this time? Yes, please come forward. And would you please state your name and address for the record?
You bet. Thank you. First of all, Mr. Mayor and council, thank you so much for all that you do. Your commitment to the city is awesome. Appreciate that. Kathy, my wife, just spoke. We've been residents of Holland for 31 years. 10 years, we were at 1365 Heather Drive, and we liked the neighborhood so much, we moved 2 houses down to 1385 Heather Drive. And so we've been on that street for 31 years, amazingly enough. I just have to say that the proposed change for RD1 going to LDR would completely remake the character of the neighborhood that we've grown to love over 31 years. The entire neighborhood is single homes, single ownership homes, and they're larger lots. And I just need to stress that we are firmly against going from R1 to LDR. I could read through all the things that are allowed with the current wording. I won't do that, but it's scary, quite frankly, thinking of our neighborhood and how people love it. They walk through it all the time because of the character it has today. I think that really was the main thing I had to say. Holland is a beautiful city. We actually have had family moving to this area. Kathy's parents, Kathy's siblings. We have family members who come here every year because they love this community and the character it has. So I just want to encourage all of you to try and preserve and promote what we have. We want to take what we have and make it better. I am concerned about the opposition to the wording as it was originally. I trust in this process. I think a lot of you have concerns that we also share, and I just believe that we can collectively come up with great solutions. So again, thank you for all you do and for your hard work. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address council at this time? Yes, please come forward. And would you state your name and address for the record?
Yes. My name is Stacy Carpernat, 221 West 11th Street. Tonight when we started off with prayer, which I thought was beautiful, and I've been saying a lot of prayers for this for quite some time. And in that prayer, we asked for wisdom, right? You guys wanted wisdom. And I think that it's sitting before you right now by the people that are here, by the letters that were written, by the interviews on the radio, by the emails, the texts, the Sentinel News. All this wisdom is here before you, stating the people don't want the UDO. They want to protect their neighborhoods. They want to cherish what they have. And I would just hate to see greed for wanting more. More isn't always more. It's more problems. It's when you have more crime, you need more police. If you have things in abundance, it's not always good. But what we have right now is wonderful. And if it wasn't, these people wouldn't be here with great opposition. So as you're making this decision using wisdom, please just think about where we started tonight. Think about where we're at after all these conversations, just here even. We're pleading to you, the people that we've elected as our representatives, to hear our voice so that you can make a decision that's wise for us. And another thing in that wisdom that I was thinking about is, as mentioned previously, 1.2 parking spaces. You know, there's this word called functionally obsolete, and I'm sure many of you are very familiar with it. And for the general public, they may not. But basically what that means in layman's terms is that you don't want to go backwards, right? As far as if in the past, people built homes and they had one bathroom and they had big families, kind of like the Waltons. You have one bathroom and maybe there's 8 to 12 people living in it, but you make it work, right? But in today's standards, you have usually minimum two bathroom home, because we look at what we need at that point of time, at that period of time. In today's society, in our rush society, we need 2 bathrooms. So I don't understand with this parking situation. It doesn't seem like we're using wisdom. At one time, we were under ordinances that we have 2 parking spaces per unit, right, for renting, and now we're going backwards, saying we've got 1.2. I don't know what 2/10 of a car is. That seems really confusing, and if somebody has some extra time after here, please share your wisdom, because I've lost that one. But you know, we're having families now that have, you know, like in my instance, my husband has a vehicle. I have a vehicle. I have a 16-year-old that's driving right now. In a few years, I'll have another teenager driving. So that's the modern day family with only 4 people, which I'm not originally from Holland, so I don't really kind of fit the norm, because it seems like a lot of my neighbors have like a family of 6 or more. But in that case, like, that seems like we're moving backwards. So we should have adequate parking so that if you have an apartment, what are we going to do with these people that live, let's say, in a quadplex? They can park in 1.2 spaces, whatever that means, for their unit, and they have somebody come and stay with them overnight. Where is that guest supposed to park? Let's say family is supposed to come and stay during the holidays. What do we do with that family when they can't park on the front of the street because the snow plows? Do we ship those cars somewhere else to some foreign lot far away? I think maybe those are some of the things that we need to focus our wisdom on as well. I appreciate your time. I do love Holland. I was quoted in a magazine when they featured our family talking about the historic district where I live. I described it to the readers as living in an HGTV program where we walk down the streets and we see scalloped shingles, and we talk to our neighbors, and we know each other by name, not by covering our hands to not see the color of their eyes.
Mr. Mayor, that's 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Your time has expired. Is there anyone else who would like to address council at this time? And would you please state your name and address for the record?
Absolutely. Dan Ackerman, 22 Bellwood Drive, 49423. Wasn't sure I was going to talk tonight. We've been through all this. It just strikes me as I listen to all of my friends and neighbors' names that during this process, here are some of the things I've heard. This is kind of my summary. I just jotted them down. I've heard you laud your staff for their work, but I haven't heard you challenge them on why they continue to recommend changes. For example, R1 is a residential name to LDR. What's the dogged commitment to changing a name, as some of our neighbors have pointed out, that may mean nothing if you look at these 2 amendments? The majority of residents have spoken not to change those things, and yet doggedly the staff continues to push the agenda along with paid consultants. But not the people who are talking, the people who are here. And I don't want to hear the argument for silence, because we know that arguments for silence, when taught in forensics, taught to lawyers, are in fact fallacies. So I don't want to hear, well, lots of people who didn't show up spoke that. I don't want to hear it. Show me the letters, show me the names. Don't argue from fallacy. It doesn't work. During the process, I've heard you asked to show us evidence of communities who've made these changes, only to hear tonight that our own staff says none exists. So you're telling us that these changes put us at the forefront of experimentation about what may or may not work. And then one council member says, well, when wisdom shows us, we'll change this back. Have you ever read the book, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie? It's a child's book. It speaks to opening up cracks. If you give a mouse a cookie, he'll want a glass of milk. And on it goes. You should read it. It's about giving an edge. During this process, I've heard people told that if they don't have anything new to say, they don't need to speak because we've heard that, and so on and so forth. I've seen comment times limited to 3 minutes because groups didn't want to hear anymore from the people who were pushing back. That's not good governance, and it shouldn't be. During this process, I've heard experienced politicians speak out against this proposed changes, and yet the changes persist. And they persist in doggedly pursuing. I remember being here with many of you to talk about my street, Bellwood Drive, becoming a thoroughfare. I remember the conversations we had. Staff were on one side, we were on the other. We asked why they doggedly wanted to do this. We couldn't get some answers. I feel like I'm there again. The other thing that was interesting was during that conversation, I had a city manager, a new city manager, who talked to me about Hope Avenue and the frustrations that those people had, and then Bellwood, and there was a list of 2 or 3 of these. And the comment was, as we move forward, we need to do this better so that the citizenry doesn't have to push against us. I'm confused. Did that happen? Or are we just back to Bellwood and Hope Avenue all over again, just on a grand scale? You need to change some of this stuff. You need to listen. It's time for you to act in the residents' best interests, not in the best interest of paid consultants or people who advocate for housing equity or for housing this or for housing that. There are things to be done. But changing things in name, TNR, R1 is not one of them. Changing to rentals is not one of them. Paving backyards and side yards is not one of them. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address council at this time? And would you please state your name and address for the record?
My name is Bruce Greenlee. I live in Park Township with my wife. I appreciate all the work that you folks have done. The Planning Commission, the thing of it is that when all you people are gone, they're not serving on council, you're not a mayor, and maybe those Planning Commission folks are retired. All these residents that have changes done to their homes, or they lose their equity in their home, or they decide to move somewhere else, you people are not going to be responsible. They're going to hold the bag, and no one is going to come to their aid. Does that make sense to anybody? I mean, generally people like the family that was here, that moved here, and would like to have some future for their kids to be able to have a single family dwelling. The other folks that have lived in their neighborhood on your street for 30-some years, if these changes are made just to be a cutting edge ordinance, I don't even know how to say it, a situation that hasn't been done a lot around the country, just to be cutting edge and to set the leader, that doesn't help the people that are residing in the city. It's a great town. That's why there's lots of people clamoring to be here. And that's why there's a shortage of single-family dwellings. There are a lot of multifamily dwellings being built in areas where the density isn't so dense as it is in the downtown area and the older neighborhoods. The older neighborhoods have been surviving. People have been keeping them up for decades, more than 100 years in a lot of cases. It would be really nice then those folks would have something to pass on to their kids and it not be changed by, even though there's been a long process, to over the grand scheme of things, it's going to seem a drop in the bucket 10 years from now when things may be changed where they never go back, because it probably won't. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address council at this time? Seeing none, I will close the public comment period in regard to this item. We have a motion and a second on the floor. Discussion by council.
No, to reiterate, this is just to put this on the agenda.
Correct. The motion is to put it on the agenda for first reading.
Right.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Garcia.
Yeah, I understand that's the motion. And I don't know how much discussion we want to have in 2 weeks or how much we want to kind of preface where discussion could go in 2 weeks. Right now that we have the public, but there was one question that I think was left somewhat unanswered at our study session, and that had to do with kind of this conversation happening at the state level with our ability to control or not control short-term rentals, and how that may or may not impact some of the conversation around LDR, right? So there was, I think, a comment as to what would take precedence. Would it be kind of that legislation, or would it be our determination to limit kind of owner-occupied accessory dwelling units? I don't know if I'm naming that correctly, but there was a conversation about that at our study session, and I'm just kind of curious where that would land.
Yeah, state law would take precedent over the zoning ordinance, so whatever is prohibited by state law could not be allowed by the zoning ordinance, or whatever is allowed by state law cannot be prohibited. Well, I shouldn't say it quite that way. Whatever state law says we cannot prohibit, we can't prohibit. There's a lot of things allowed that we can prohibit, but it depends on what the wording of the statute is ultimately adopted, if one is adopted.
Kind of another comment like that. I get that. Then that's kind of where I was thinking. Currently in LDR, I mean I guess it's more of a comment, that I'm sharing to whoever wants to listen. But this has certainly been a tough year for a lot of reasons. But one of the things that has happened, and I'm guilty of it, is it's been a year that's kind of fanned this flame of skepticism and distrust, and I think it really has put people at odds aggressively against each other that otherwise would have been pleasant neighbors. And even as I sit here, I'm kind of wrestling inside my head and heart, to be honest, on not reacting out of emotion on a number of comments. And I think that's just that I'm human, like the rest of us in this room. But there is, I think, a level of misinformation and things that have happened right through this process. It has been quite a process, and has it been the perfect process? No, I mean there was a lot going on, and no, I don't blame it all on COVID, but there has been a level of complexity that none of us have navigated before this time, and so that is a reality. But I do think that we have been listening, we have been paying attention. As much as it's fun to sit here, right, night after night, doing this, I think it's the right thing to do. And so we have been listening, and I think some of the considerations and things that are on the table that we will discuss here in 2 weeks is part of what we've been doing, paying attention to the residents of Holland, both both property owners and renters alike. Yeah, so I guess that's just kind of a comment to whoever's listening.
Great, thank you. Any other comments, discussion from council on the motion to put this on the agenda for first reading? Seeing none, Kathy, I'm sorry, Scott?
Well, I mean, there was a number of comments made, questions, and we even said, well, we're just gonna hold off until we have some discussion, right? And I think this is a good opportunity to take every opportunity we can to explain anything that we had a discussion on the 23rd. And three things I heard, and I don't know if there's a way we can ask staff to weigh in on this during our discussion, but the TNR, leaving the multi-unit eligibility the same, I wonder if we can get clarification on that. That's one. Two is LDR. Why do we have to use the acronym LDR versus R1? That's been, communicated multiple times tonight and through emails and accessory. In addition, but then also the change for parking. I know that's a formula base, right? And we've talked about this in our study session. Well, maybe it can be applied to multi-units, larger units that need additional spaces versus single-family homes. I don't know if those three things could just kind of be clarified during our discussion. Is there a way staff can kind of clarify those three things?
I mean, some of that is commentary, but what I will do, I'll do my best, Scott. I think as the screen up there says, my interpretation of what your conversation was, which wasn't a vote, but was a consensus. And then what we do is we try to prepare something that makes it easy for you to say, and then ultimately take action on. Which isn't exact, right? And then you guys ultimately are the ones that take action and vote on things. But on the TNR, leave multifamily unit eligibility the same. The consensus that we heard and leaving it the same is leaving it the way that it exists today. So if that answers your question, that is, I believe, what that language says and should clarify for everyone. Again, not a vote, but a consensus of what you all talked about and what we are preparing for you. As it relates to remove, I think that has the same thing to do. It's removing what already had been altered several times through the process, not by staff, but by Planning Commission and then ultimately in conversations with you, so that I think similarly it mirrors the language above of it leaves it the way that it is today. And then the parking change, I mean, I think what needs to be understood, what I would try to explain is that it is not uncommon at all where when the FNDT is basically north downtown and it deals with, in that area, units that could be up to 12, I mean, many stories tall, which are very large units. And it's not uncommon at all, and quite frankly, in our current ordinances, where when you apply a formula to a unit in a building that has many units, those fractions of numbers do actually make a big difference. And in fact, the parking here it's what we heard from you is actually increasing the requirements for parking, which actually would increase the number of parking that would need to be provided. So hopefully that helps clarify what's on the screen in front of you, which again, it is trying to repeat back to you what we heard in your conversation as council. And that information also is outlined in various documents in the packet that was provided to you all tonight.
Right, so TNR and LDR, no changes. We're gonna leave it the way it always has been. The only question is, why are we using the acronym LDR? It seems like that's a sticking point for some of the community members here and elsewhere. Can we leave it R1? What's the purpose behind it? And just kind of ask, I mean, several of us have asked that question. I think it'd be nice for those people in the room and those people listening to understand the clarity of why, we might leave it LDR. But then the parking itself, I've heard comments made about, well, where does, in my residential area, where does people park if I'm only allowed 1.2 parking spaces? How do you calculate that? That's not, it's a misrepresentation of what's being presented. And not intentionally, but it's not that way. It's only for this specific area within the city. So hopefully that provides additional clarification there. So it's not really impacting our residential areas. But I would like to just talk about briefly what the LDR R1 and what that means and why it's so important to the families to keep it R1.
Yeah, sure. And Scott, I'd be happy to address that because I sat through those planning commission discussions and actually for clarity, because I'd like to put a little meat on the bones of what Mr. Van Beek was trying to be very careful, I think, about what he was saying, because I want to make sure everybody's clear. Council has not made any decisions on this. Council's not making any decisions on this tonight. Simply, all we're doing from a process standpoint is officially putting it on our agenda so that we can start talking about it, and that conversation will happen in 2 weeks. Now, realistically, we talked about this a lot 2 weeks ago, which is where these recommendations were gleaned from. You know, from those conversations, staff listened to us and said, and as was said, you know, read the tea leaves where they said, okay, we're kind of hearing what council's saying with this. We're going to try to be helpful in putting language together that we think reflects what council had been talking about, so that when it comes time, if we choose to make amendments or changes to what has been proposed by Planning Commission, that we've got the tools in front of us to be able to do this. That's kind of setting the stage for this whole conversation. And I want to clarify, because we had a conversation about this 2 weeks ago, that what's up here, or my understanding of what's up here in regard to TNR and LDR, doesn't leave everything the same in TNR and LDR, because there are other parts of the UDO that address things within those zoning districts. And I want to be really careful so that the public understands what these recommendations are saying is, one, do not change the eligibility for multifamily units in TNR. There are other changes that UDO proposes in TNR, but right now, and the question that came up is, hey, I think there's a fallacy up there because you're saying you're going to be allowing multifamily units in TNR. They're allowed in TNR right now, and I want to make that really clear for the public, is you can have a duplex in TNR right now. You can have a triplex in TNR right now. You can have a quadplex in TNR right now. All that the Planning Commission proposed was saying, you can do those things on slightly smaller lots than you can currently. And what my understanding of our conversation was 2 weeks ago is that council is talking about, or thinking about talking about, is probably the more accurate way to put it. I'm trying to be really careful here too. Is thinking about changing that recommendation or altering from that recommendation to saying we're not necessarily interested in changing the lot sizes from where they currently stand. That part of the recommendation by Planning Commission for TNR, we're probably not interested in changing that will stay the same. There will still be duplexes in TNR and triplexes and quadplexes, but in exactly the same way that they're allowed right now. That's the way I see that one. With LDR, the change to remove the recommendation for allowing attached accessory dwelling units and conversions. And detached is still permissible. Detached still exists. And that gets into that other question that was raised, is why change the name? If you're not changing anything in the district, why change the name? Well, there's this misunderstanding that R1 stands for single family residential. It doesn't. We currently under the zoning ordinance have R1, R2, R3. We've got C1, C2. I don't know if we've got C3 or not. I've dealt with zoning ordinances that have it. We have I1, I2, I3. R1 does not mean just single family residential, because there are currently lots in the city of Holland that have more than one single family unit on it. They have detached accessory dwelling units. And R1 was never meant to mean single family residential. It's just the first of the residential classes. R2 doesn't mean just duplexes. R3 doesn't mean just triplexes. Actually, I think R2 you can do duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes. I think in R3 you can do larger residential developments in it. And one of the things that the Planning Commission went through, for industrial and commercial, my office sits in I think in a C2 district. versus a C1. Does that mean I can have two commercial businesses on it? No, it doesn't at all. It's just a different type of commercial. So I want to make sure the public understands R1 doesn't mean single-family residential. Why did the Planning Commission go through this process of renaming, frankly, just about every single zone district in the area? They said, we want to have an organized structure for the naming of all of the zoning districts that better represent what's happening within those particular districts. And so there's LDR, which is low density residential, which under the language that council is looking at is not changing the number of units that you can have in any particular place, but it's not just single family. Medium density residential and high density residential, and all of the CMU and all of the other districts that are there. But we talked a lot about how do we put this system together, this plan together, so that when people who are using this ordinance in the future can understand what each one of those things mean. Because right now, it's actually confusing and misrepresentative. If you're looking at R1 and R2 and thinking R1 means single family and R2 means duplexes, you're wrong. That's not what it means. And that's why we've moved to those different naming structures for it. And then I think you guys hit it right on the head in terms of parking. These are not maximum parking requirements. These are minimum parking requirements. And right now, citywide, the minimum parking requirement, regardless of where you are, is one off-street parking space per unit across the city. All this is talking about is in one small district, north downtown, saying, you know what, we are proposing the possibility of some taller buildings in there. We think that it may make sense to increase the required amount of parking that's there. Is that the only parking that's going to be there? No. If a smart developer says, I know that the people who are going to be living here are going to need more parking, they'll do more than 1.2. All we're doing is putting a minimum in there. So hopefully that helps clarify that. I know that I think you understood all of that ahead of time, but I'm not sure that the folks listening at home did.
I think all of us understand that, but I think helping convey that to the people that were here today and those who are listening, it helps provide a little bit more clarity of where we're going with this, potentially going with this. And so that if we vote to put it on the agenda, as being discussed right now, you say, oh my gosh, they didn't even listen to us. Why did they even vote to put it on the agenda? They're not listening to us. We are listening. We are listening. We're having discussions. We're having very, very deep discussions about what's being proposed and what we may or may not like about what's being proposed, and we're going to have to make changes, potentially.
Potentially.
I know I'm going to be proposing changes, but I don't know about my colleagues, but certainly I will be proposing changes going forward. So I just wanted to make sure that we give some clarity, I guess, this evening before we set the motion moving forward to put it on the agenda, and people will say, oh, you weren't listening to us. You weren't listening to us. Yes, we are listening.
Great. Thanks, Scott. Okay, we have a motion and a second to, I'm going to make sure that I say this correctly, Ron, to place the recommendation from Planning Commission on our agenda for first reading. So in old-fashioned parlance of Robert's Rules of Order, so we can start talking about it. And we can start making those changes and make amendments and those kinds of things at our meeting in 2 weeks. Did I say that correctly?
You said it very accurately.
Okay. Any other discussion by council in regard to the motion that is currently on the floor? Mr. Byrd, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, I do want to say something. Two things. One, for Keith, if he could give a reference, or someone could give a reference regarding the parking for north downtown. You just said north downtown, and is there a reference point? Like, I know where it is, but just for clarity for everyone else.
So because there's so many districts that have been named, I'm not going to be able to sketch the streets or anything, but in the materials that are in everyone's packet, it's because we tried to do it and make it usable and that you can decipher that. There is very clearly a color which denotes the north downtown, the NDT area. And you can find that in the packet of materials. For anyone that's listening, it's on the website. It's been on the website in multiple different meetings. But roughly, and please, this is roughly, right? North downtown is not 8th Street. It's north of 8th Street. And it's roughly kind of in the River Avenue, and kind of then as it sweeps down along 4th and 5th, and I think it touches 6th Street.
I would say roughly north of 6th Street between the lake and Freedom Village. Am I going to get at least a nod from Jenna? That's roughly what we're talking about. The window on the waterfront
Is open
area
space,
is
you
mostly
know,
open
so
space
there's-
now. Yeah.
But thank you, Quincy. But
Yep.
it's all very clearly delineated in that zoning map.
Right. I just wanted to put that out there because some, like Scott said, some thought it was in residential areas, and it is
It's
not.
not.
Okay. Then the other thing, we talked about some things being left in TNR.
Mhm.
What are some of those things that are left in TNR?
I'm not sure I could go through the laundry list of them. I think that there may have been some setback changes they're in there, some side setback changes that are in there. There are a handful of other things. Frankly, the one that most people have been focusing on is this lot size change, and none of the other ones have really been discussed as any kind of issue for folks. So I haven't internalized all of those the way that I have all of the details on these. I'm sure that if we asked staff to give us a rundown of those in 2 weeks when we have the conversation on this, I'm sure that they'll have that available for us.
All right, I think that would be great, just to clarify so people will understand that these things are being left on and that we are listening to them. I don't know how big that list is.
I'm
but-
hesitating because part of it, and I don't want to oversimplify it, but there are elements where we're updating something from 1940s language. So we're changing everything. So part of it is like when you go in and you say, well, is it the same as it used to be? Well, like we're changing everything because a lot of it was updated and hard to understand and organized differently. So.
Yeah. There's very little that's what I would call a substantive change. There's a lot of that formatting stuff, and actually one of the things we're going to.
So this is mostly what's left on is I guess, minimal things, would you say? Be classified as minimal? Like formatting and different things like that, or no?
Quincy, I'm not trying to be difficult here, but the problem is that as we're experiencing, what one person's minimal is another person's destruction. So I am always very cautious about sharing information like that because then I open up myself and my staff to manipulating or anything like that, which I'm obviously very protective of.
This may be a more appropriate discussion for us to have in 2 weeks as policymakers, and in what we think is a big deal or what we don't think is a big deal, rather than asking staff to do that.
Can I just say that if you go to the interactive map on the website, they do the comparisons. There's a little table with each zone district. And so you can see what changes were recommended.
Thank you, Lynn. I had forgotten about that ability on the website. That website's phenomenal that way. It really is.
HollandUdo.com, right? Yeah.
Yes, hollandudo.com for anybody who's listening at home or wants to write that down. Any other discussion on the motion in front of us to place the recommendation from Planning Commission on the agenda for first reading? Seeing none, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Corbin?
Yes.
Hoekstra?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Byrd?
Yes.
Garcia?
Yes.
Trethewey?
Yes.
Arnshorst?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, item 12D1, Venralty Farm Civil War Muster Historic Saloon, September 17 through 19, 2021. Mr. Van Beek.
You know, there is this tradition that we have where there's certain things that we know if we put it on consent agenda, it would just get pulled off and someone would make a statement and take a certain vote. We've just learned to just put it on the regular agenda. So that's what this is. This is a repeat request to have a, as described, Civil War muster historic saloon as part of the muster that's at Van Raalte Park. And I can certainly go into more detail if you all would like to, but I have a feeling someone's about to make a comment, which I appreciate.
I believe that we need a motion first before we have any comments on this, unless we've got questions for staff members. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion from council in regard to this item. Moved by Corbin. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Ernst-Horst. Hey, is there any discussion, Mr. Trethewey?
Oh, sure.
All right, fire away.
I will not apologize for staff catching this. It's been a long tradition for me on public property. I will vote against it. I don't care where it's at. If it's on city property, public property, it will be voted down by myself. I'm usually in the minority, but I will not apologize. I will apologize for lengthening the meeting, but I will not apologize for asking this to be removed or having it removed or voting no.
Thank you for that, and no need ever to apologize. We all have different views on different things, and it is very important that each of us feels free to be able to express those. So thank you for that. Appreciate it. Any other questions, discussion? Yes, Mr. Hoekstra.
I'm curious if staff knows what historic beer tastes like. Is it just old beer?
I think it tasted better than the water.
Oh.
I'll consider that to be somewhat of a humorous rhetorical question.
I
am really interested, so if staff could look, no, I'm kidding.
What I would encourage the council member to do is maybe show up at the muster on September 17 to 19, and you may get personal experience.
It's an excellent response. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Byrd,
Yes.
Garcia,
Yes.
Trethewey,
No.
Arnshorst,
Yes.
Corbin, Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Kathy. Next item, under City Manager 12E 2.1, approval of Code of Ordinance amendments to repeal, add, amend, and renumber chapters and sections for first reading, with final adoption scheduled for July 21, 2021. Mr. Van Beek.
I'm going to read the room and guess that Mr. Vanderveen did a good job of explaining what this is and what that means, and that you probably don't want me to explain it one more time, but if you have any questions, we will do our best to answer that.
Questions? Actually, we need a motion on the floor first.
So moved.
Moved by Hoekstra. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Corbin. Any questions, comments? Mr. Hoekstra.
Yeah, just to clarify, I think I read this in here that both this item and 2.2 are contingent on the approval of the other ordinance on the 21st, right?
Correct, and they should be taken up after the other ordinance.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? I'm going to ask the same question that I asked at Planning Commission, a very pointed question. I'm putting my lawyer cross-examination hat. I want a simple yes or no answer to this. Are there any items in this that do not already exist somewhere else within the city code of ordinances? In other words, I'll rephrase that. Are we creating any new ordinance language here whatsoever, other than to move things around and have things that are, and make it easier to understand? There's no new law here, correct?
No, we're just moving things around.
All right, that's the answer that I was hoping to get.
No.
No, thank you. Yeah, finally, leave it to a lawyer to not answer it yes or no. You beat me, Mr. Vanderveen, again. All right, any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Raymond,
Yes.
Byrd,
Yes.
Garcia,
Yes.
Trethewey,
Yes.
Arnshorst,
Yes.
Corbin,
Yes.
Hoekstra,
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And along the same line, 12E 2.2, approval of Code of Ordinance amendments to align with the Unified Development Ordinance for first reading, final adoption scheduled for July 2021. Mr. Van Beek, I think this has already been explained, but I'm going to pass it to you because that's what I do.
Yes.
All right.
It's already been explained.
All right.
So moved.
Moved by Corbin. Is there support? Support by Trethewey. Any discussion? Same question as last time. Nothing new here, just renumbering, correct?
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderveen. Appreciate that. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Byrd?
Yes.
Garcia? Yes. Trethewey?
Yes.
Arnshorst?
Yes.
Corbin?
Yes.
Hoekstra?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Mayor Box?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item number 12E 6.1, gifts. Kathy, would you please review the gifts for us?
The city manager's office is pleased to report the following gifts. Department of Public Safety K-9 program, June 25th event, in-kind donation. Bob Seegers at Crown Motors, 2 Yeti coolers valued at $303.14. Parks and Recreation Sal Perez Scholarship Program, employee donations, $143. Parks and Recreations Van Rolte Dog Park, Holland Area Convention and Visitors Bureau, $3,000. Downtown Group, Windmill Island Gardens, donations log January 1 through June 30, 2021, $1,011.02. It is recommended that these donations be accepted with appreciation, credited to the appropriate account, and an expression of gratitude be forwarded to said donors.
Thank you, Kathy. And what is the pleasure of council in regard to the gifts?
Motion to accept with appreciation.
Moved by Trethewey. Is there support, Mr. Byrd?
Support.
Support by Mr. Byrd. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 13, communications from the city manager. I've got you trained. I didn't even have to say it.
So I don't have much, but I do want to just let you know, and there's not a lot of people left, but just so everyone's aware, I made this in the council communication already. It looks like we're heading towards a big night on July 21, and I'm sure that you will handle that process and everything well, but I will not be with you that evening. I have responsibilities to our professional association across the other side of the state, and as much as I'd like to be here with you that night, I won't be, but I think everything is in well stead. So just want to, not only for you, I think you've already all read that in my note, but just so everyone's aware. Mr. Van Dyken, he'll be doing double, triple, quadruple duty that night, and he'll have a smile on his face.
Great.
Thank you.
Is that it? That was fast. Wonderful.
I promised.
Excellent. The mayoral reappointments and correction to city boards and commissions. I've got a couple of corrections I need to make here and some new ones. Ruth Stegeman was inadvertently recommended for reappointment to the Human Relations Commission rather than the Neighborhood Improvement Commission at the June 16, 2021 regular council session, her term expiring June 30, 2024. So it's recommended that the city council accept this correction and reappoint Sean Miller and Scott Traeger to the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, terms to expire June 30 of 2024. Christy Dunn and Steve Farrell to the Civic Center Place Board, terms to expire June 30, 2024. Kiefer Sestrick to the Human Relations Commission, term expiring June 30, 2024. Michael Cuellar to the International Relations Commission, term expiring June 30, 2024. And Javen Groningen to the Neighborhood Improvement Committee, term expiring June 30, 2024. What is the pleasure of council in regard to these recommendations?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Moved by Trethewey. Is there support? Support by Arnshorst. I'm going to give her that because she was up there, but she didn't speak quite quickly enough. But I'm going to give that one to her. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Appointments, motions, and communications from council members. Mr. Trethewey.
Yes, sir. I have one. It is a recommendation and a motion to council to reappoint Ron Hemeke to the Community Pool Authority, CPA, term expiring June 30 of 2025.
Great. Thank you. And what is the recommendation, or what is the motion, pleasure of council? Sorry. Support by Corbin. Is there support for his support?
It was a motion.
Oh, it was a motion. All right, moved and supported. Is there any discussion? Thank you. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we are on to, hey, we've got first reading of ordinances that we need to do.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Trethewey.
Back
Are
it
there
up.
any other communications? And you even reminded me about this one. I apologize.
I have just one thing, and that is we have a responsibility second only to the budget, is the evaluation of the city manager, our only employee. That work has been done. The review has been per the request and per city charter. The review was done in closed session. The committee made up of myself, Councilmember Raymond, and Councilmember, what's your name again? Corbin. Met with the city manager a couple of times to review the reviews. This one was done strictly by the city council. Next year, you can do whatever you see fit. But I am happy to say that council has approved the continuation of the city manager's contract. We have a 3-year contract. I think this one's going to be the renegotiation, I believe. Keith, all kidding aside, and we do an awful lot of kidding, in chatting with staff, in chatting with council members, in chatting with fellow leadership people and other community members, you are a welcome addition to the city. We wish you a very long and prosperous career. Appreciate all the efforts that you've made. And personally, one thing that I'm going to regret, if nothing else, in leaving in November is the fact that I don't get to work with you anymore. So, congratulations and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike, and here. Any other motions, communications from council members?
One more.
Oh, yes, Mr. Byrd.
We spoke about 4th of July fireworks. 4th of July has passed us and we have not had fireworks, but I just want to reiterate, August 20th is the day for fireworks. So we'll be having fireworks on August 20th, which I'm looking forward to.
Excellent. Extra celebration this year. Great. Any other communications, motions from council members? Now we have first reading of ordinances. Item number 16A, Chapter 39, Section 39.1.01 through 39-14. Entertaining a motion to accept for first reading. Did I write that correctly, Ron?
That's correct.
All right. Moved by Corbin. Is there support by Byrd? Any discussion by council members? Seeing none, do we need to do a roll call on this one, Ron?
Yes, you do.
All right. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Garcia,
Yes.
Trethewey,
Yes.
Arnshorst,
Yes.
Corbin,
Yes.
Hoekstra,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Byrd,
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 16B, repealing all of chapters 32, 33, and 36 and adding a new section 11-13.1 to chapter 11, a new article 2, sections 22-12 to 22-18 to chapter 22, a new article 3, sections 24 to 21 and 24 to 34 to chapter 24, and new Article 4, sections 2-32 and 24 to 46 to chapter 24, renumbering chapter 32A as 32-1 through 32-14, and retitling chapter 32AC for first reading. What is the pleasure of council?
Move to accept his first
Yeah,
reading.
could you repeat that, please?
And I'm not even wearing my reading glasses. I'm pretty impressed.
We weren't listening either. I move
We got motion by Trethewey, support by Arnshorst. Any discussion? Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Trethewey,
Yes.
Arnshorst,
yes.
Corbin, Hoekstra,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Byrd,
Yes.
Garcia,
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And then, last but not least, item 16C, Code of Ordinances Amendment.
Motion to accept as first reading.
Moved by Trethewey, support by Byrd. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Arnshorst,
Yes.
Corbin, Hoekstra,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yeah.
Byrd, Garcia,
Yes.
Trethewey,
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. I'll entertain one additional motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Moved by Trethewey, support by Byrd. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you all.